The highest bounty CH 31 to 60. Chapter 31. In Medicine King Valley, Gylding and Anthony had a very smooth conversation. Anthony's request was simple. The newcomers' ranking competition would start in 3 months. If Gylding got into the top 50 in the competition, the Hermian Alliance of Skyrivers Division would issue a prize worth 100 million star credits. If he could get into the top 10, the prize would be raised to be worth 1 billion star credits. Naturally, Gylding would not refuse a win-win situation like this. Even if he could not make the top 50, it would make no difference to him. After all he needed to do was to wear a tag with Skyriver Sector's name on it when he participated in the competition that he already planned to join. Therefore, both sides were able to reach a consensus quickly. After he finished the discussion with Anthony, Gylding strolled around a bit. Little did he know, he had managed to gather a large crowd because of his video that had been broadcasted in the public district. Naturally, the pharmacologists and temporary residents in Medicine King Valley knew of him. Even people who have never entered Medicine King Valley before were aware of him. Out of desperation, Gylding had no choice but to log out of the system. As he sat in the cockpit and stared out the window at the endless abyss of space, Gylding asked, "Neptune, any news today?" "No major events." Neptune also seemed a little bored. "I just received the news that Kane also changed course. This time, he's returning to the Cosmic Sea. Cold Blood's Punishers are also said to be rushing toward a new course. The opening of new routes has the interstellar pirates from Dragonsaur Cosmic Nation all excited, many of whom who were initially on their way to other Cosmic Nations now changing courses to head to the new route. For I think it's good that it's going to get lively soon." Gylding grinned. He was the type of person that liked to be amongst the crowd. He really enjoyed working in Rose Tavern for all those years, with one of the main reasons being that he could meet all sorts of people. The stories he heard were the things that gave birth to his idea of being an interstellar pirate. When he thought about Kane and Cold Blood, Gylding realized that these guys who had hundreds of millions of star credits worth of bounty on their head were super strong and valiant. He had seen how Kane fought. His movements were so quick that his naked eyes were not able to see it. Cold Blood's bounty was close to Kane's, and so was his strength. You really need to improve your strength quickly. If you enter the new route at your current level, you'll be eaten alive. Neptune gave his opinions without holding back. "I understand. It's a new route, so there'll be many powerhouses as strong as Uncle Kane. Perhaps even stronger." Gylding nodded. He chose to take the new route not because he was naive and did not know any better. In truth, he did not overestimate his strength. He was well aware of what he could and could not do. Connect me to the virtual arena. First, I'll practice all the moves that can be learned with 100 points or cell index. That way, when my body strength is enough, I'll be able to use the moves the moment I'm familiar with them. It'll save me a lot of time practicing the moves. Gylding planned to enter the virtual arena to continue his practice of the ultimate arts. This is just a temporary solution. However, it seems that this is the only way for now. Neptune could not do much about Gylding's stats and immediately connected Gylding to the arena. After Gylding entered the arena, he saw his latest information. Alias, Lukewarm Assassin. Gender, male. Age, 15 years old. Times fought, 10. Wins, 10. Losses, 0. Draws, 0. Win rate, 100%. Total points, 55. Honor, 10 consecutive wins. Honor description: when one gets 10 consecutive wins in the arena, points will be accumulated. 1 point for the first game, 2 points for the second game, 3 points for the third game, 10 points for the 10th game. Can I exchange my total points for items? Gylding seemed to have seen the corresponding explanation somewhere in the past. Yes, you may. In the junior level arena, the purchasing power of 1 point is equivalent to 100 star credits. This is why many people from poorer families come here to compete and sell their points, or purchase items directly with them, Neptune explained. Of course, there are some rich people who accumulate points just to show how strong they are. That's why they will often buy points from people with high points. A direct transaction of points? Gylding raised his eyebrow. Doesn't the system prohibit it? No, the system allows it, because, for every transaction, the system charges a 5% processing fee, Neptune explained. So, points can also be transferred from one person to another? There were still many things Gyuding did not understand as he had only been to the arena once. Of course it can be transferred. How else would they earn anything? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? Can other people see the number of battles and win rate? Gyuding found it pointless that some people would just collect points just for the sake of it. If they paid, they could set permissions so that ordinary people won't be able to check their stats, and ensure that it only shows the total points. Neptune laughed and said, and as far as I know, the rich can bribe their rivals to get points and higher win rates. If you offer enough money, the opponent will just admit defeat. In the arena, there are many people who are short of money and play to feed themselves. It seems that there are unwritten rules everywhere. Gyuding shook his head and sighed. There are a lot of things that can't be completely eliminated, they can only be regulated and controlled. Overall, the arena's system is actually pretty good. The entire market is still very standardized, and the overall efficiency of the system is pretty much unaffected. Neptune stated, as long as I don't run into these kinds of problems, I'll be fine. Earning some pocket money from cultivating the ultimate arts will be my main goal in using the arena. Gyuding was also aware that these kinds of things could not be completely avoided. Don't underestimate any opponent in the arena, even though it's the junior level arena. There will also be professionals. I just checked the battle video data. You're no match for the top 100 ranks, and this is just Skyriver sector's part of the arena. Neptune warned. It's okay, it won't be disgraceful to lose to a real powerhouse. Gyuding grinned and pressed the random match battle button. Missy, that kid from last time came back. In the system operating room, a staff member dialed a number after he saw Gyuding's request to find a new match. I see, I'll be right here. You guys go ahead and pair him with a person ranked around 10,000th first. A female voice came from the opposite side of the communicator. Surprisingly, it was the woman who was eating the lollipop in the operating room last time out. They've matched you with a person ranked around 10,000th. A person of this rank is basically a powerhouse that has just awakened their ability. Just be careful. Neptune disclosed the pairing information to Gyuding in advance before the result came out. Chapter 32. Gyuding was quickly transmitted to the ring. His opponent, who had been standing on the ring for a long time, was a tall and thin man with the idea of not my fault. I'm tall. Kiddo, why have you come and sniped me all the way from the 80,000th rank? Tall guy did not understand as he had sniped newcomers once or twice before. Most of the time, however, the newcomer had racked up too many consecutive wins and accumulated too many points. Therefore, when he saw that Gyuding, who only had 10 consecutive wins, he was a bit curious about whether Gyuding had accidentally offended some top official in the arena. Players ranked at least 10,000th were basically Gene level 3 adults. Not only have they awakened their abilities, but some of them have had also strengthened their abilities for the second time. Moreover, some had even awakened 2 abilities. Tall Guy's ability was called Iron Block. It was not particularly a special ability, but it allowed his body's defense to increase several-fold when it was activated, which made his muscles as hard as iron blocks. He ranked around 10,000th mostly because he tied a lot instead of losing. Most of the time, he tied because his opponents could not break his defense whilst he could not beat his enemy. After Tall Guy activated Iron Block, his defense was akin to a Gene level 4 adult. The cell index of a junior level arena was typically limited to 100 points, but his defense was comparable to that of a person with a cell index of nearly 300 points. This was why there were not many people who could break through his defense. This guy's defense is extremely powerful. He has a special ability called Iron Block. Once activated, his body will become as hard as an iron block. Neptune quickly checked the opponent's information. He had to remind Gyuding that the opponent in front of him was extremely powerful. Although it took just a few seconds, it was enough for Neptune to read all the information surrounding Tall Guy, which included information from the videos. He has participated in more than 5,000 battles, losing less than 200 battles and tying over 1,000 times. His total points aren't high because of the draws. Strong defense? Gyuding grinned after he heard what Neptune said. That's good. I'll be sure to show him my moves. Gyuding used Silent Step as his avatar flashed multiple times before it charged toward his opponent. He's fast. Tall Guy was shocked when he saw Gyuding's movements. Immediately, His view on Gyuding changed as he activated his ability, Iron Block. My ability can easily withstand close-range attacks from powerhouses of the same level. I don't believe that a 15-year-old twin can break through. At that moment, Gyuding's steel fist struck his opponent's chest. The chest was one of the most protected parts of the body defense because it was surrounded by the ribs. The main reason Gyuding chose to attack this part was because he wanted to see how strong his opponent's defense really was. Clang! Suddenly, the metallic sound of gold and iron clashing was heard, as if a giant hammer had struck a large bell. Gyuding's fist felt like it had punched a hard iron block. Not only did it feel indestructible, but he could also feel a force repelling him backward. His avatar retreated hurriedly as his right hand shook slightly from the force. Stop struggling. You'll never be able to break through my defense, tall guy shouted at Gyuding as he charged toward him. However, he was secretly a little shocked. When Gyuding threw his punch just now, he could clearly feel the strength of the blow. Although Gyuding failed to break tall guy's defense, the part he attacked, his chest, was his strongest point. If not for the fact that his iron block ability increased his body weight, he would probably have been sent flying from the punch. Moreover, there was a dull feeling in his chest which indicated that the attack by his opponent was not ineffective. If an opponent hit one's vital position, they were likely to be injured. Gyuding was quiet. His opponent's unbeatable defense made things difficult for him. That punch he tried to test the waters showed him how hard it would be to break his opponent's defense. Furthermore, his opponent would not just stand there while he did his thing. On the viewing platform, someone finally recognized Tall Guy. This guy's defense is as tough as SHT. I've seen his matches before. Me too. One time, he stood there motionless while his opponent bombarded him with punches for 3 hours. In the end, his opponent admitted defeat due to insufficient spirit. This killer is just a kid. He still looks like a minor to me. Why is the arena bullying him? How could they match a rank 80,000 with a rank 10,000? Some of them who had not seen Gyuding's previous games cried out at how unfair the match was for him. You haven't watched his previous games, but don't underestimate his size. He basically wiped out his opponents within a split second in his previous battles, a person who had watched Gyuding's previous game explained. In the ring, Gyuding activated another move. He used Ultimate Arts Level 3 Steel Fist with all his might. After a long pause as he weighed his options, he decided to go ahead and try crack his opponent's defense himself. Since the power of his Ultimate Arts Level 3 attack was not enough to break his opponent's defense, he figured he would try his best to break through to level 4. Although it was a little difficult to do so with a cell index of 100 points, it was not impossible. A short-term strenuous feat on his body should not be too big a problem for his body at this time. Tall Guy saw how fiercely his opponent had charged at him and decided that he was not going to let him attack him willy-nilly anymore. Thus, Tall Guy proceeded to charge toward Gyuding. Fist to fist. Clang! The two of them took a few steps back. With full force, Gyuding engaged both his legs and charged toward him once more. Tall Guy felt a little bitter. His fighting technique was merely considered proficient. If he faced proper fighting masters, the only person getting hit would be himself. Although his opponent was young, it seemed that his combat skills were quite astounding. As one could imagine, Gyuding bombarded him with all sorts of moves, basically pinning Tall Guy back. Most of the time, Tall Guy used his arms to protect his vital parts whilst throwing the occasional ineffective jab at Gyuding. That kid is fierce, someone exclaimed from the stands. In the monitoring room, it seemed that the woman with the short hair from last time had now dyed her hair red. Her leather jacket was unzipped so that it exposed a plain black bra. She wore a black short leather skirt that showed her slender thighs, and long black leather boots underneath. With a lollipop in her mouth, she sat on a swivel chair and watched Gyuding's battle live stream. That tall man is going to lose, the short-haired woman immediately proclaimed. Get someone around rank 5000, preferably one with a special ability such as stealth or something. We'll see how he handles it. Missy, if you want him to lose, it'll be much easier to get someone in the natural stream, a big man in a black suit beside her suggested. Who said I wanted him to lose? I just want to see how far he can push his strange technique. Meanwhile, I want to also see if I'm able to mimic any of them. The short-haired woman smiled smugly. I've secretly watched my dad practice the ultimate arts before. It seems like the kid's moves are similar to my dad's. Still, There's a lot of differences between them. I'm guessing it may be another version of the ultimate arts. Missy, the ultimate arts cannot be practiced. The big man frowned slightly. I'm just studying it. What's it to you? The short-haired woman pouted. Don't forget that I'm still an interstellar pirate. If I meet a hunter from the Federation government, I must have some knowledge of the ultimate arts in order to save myself. Missy, Master used to be the captain of the hunters. They have enough respect for Master to not lay a finger on you, the big man dissuaded. That's in Dragonsaur Cosmic Nation. Dragonsaur Cosmic Nation is merely a 2-star Cosmic Nation. Dad has said before that any hunter from a 4-star grade Cosmic Nation is as strong as him, let alone a 5-star Cosmic Nation. I can't hide under my dad's protection forever. His name can only shield me so long, especially if I leave one day. Therefore, I want to make a name for myself so that one day in the future, I'll be able to protect my dad too. The words of the short-haired woman silenced the big man. Chapter 33. In the arena's ring. The fight between Gylding and the tall man was still ongoing. The situation looked very different for the two of them. Gylding was getting more and more courageous, while his opponent focused mainly on defending. Gylding was definitely setting the rhythm of the fight. He overwhelmed his opponent and showed no mercy. He rained down on him like a storm such that his opponent barely had enough strength to withstand his blows. Gylding used the 15th, 16th, all the way up to the 18th stance of Steel Fist. For the Phantom Kick, he used the 13th stance all the way until the 18th stance. Even for the close-range attacks such as the Lightning Elbow and Flaming Knee, he went all the way to the 12th stance. The 18th stance was the last move in level 3. Even with a 150% boost, Gylding knew that it was not enough. Although a flurry of blows might break his opponent's defense, it was not what Gylding wanted. What he wanted was to break his opponent's defense with a single blow. This was why he would not stop pushing himself until his attacks got stronger. After Gylding managed to muster up the last stance in the Ultimate Arts Level 3 Steel Fist, he started scanning his brain for the contents of Level 4. Neptune was reluctant to allow Gylding to expose himself to too much of the ultimate arts so early on because that set of moves damaged one's body greatly. Not only did it accelerate one's body metabolism, it also accelerated the aging of one's cells. The main reason why Neptune did not stop Gylding was that he was in the virtual arena. In here, Gylding's body was just a combination of data. It did not matter what damage he sustained, since it would still be neutralized. In the virtual world, as long as Neptune was willing, he could reconstruct Gylding's body in the blink of an eye. What Neptune was more worried about was Gylding's desire for victory in battle. In the virtual arena, this desire usually made him push his body past his limits. He was worried that when Gylding encountered something similar in real life, Gylding might end up doing the same. Immediately, Gylding got all of the moves from Ultimate Arts Level 4 and blasted the first stance from Level 4 at Tall Guy. Since his comprehension of martial arts was very good, the moves were normally successfully applied. Then the second stance, and the third stance. One attack after another he fired them off, with each blow stronger than the last. Slowly, Tall Guy could feel his heart sinking to his stomach. He originally thought that his opponent's high speed and continuous movement meant that it would damage his body greatly, and he would not last long. Even though the body was a virtual one, it still fully simulated the human body's physical strength, endurance, perception, spirit strength, and all other variables. This made Tall Guy, who was confident about his physical strength and endurance, slowly lose hope if winning. He gradually felt his physical strain increasing as his spirit, which was connected to the arena, teetered on the brink of depletion. Gylding continued using his Steel Fist up until the 6th stance of Level 4. He could feel his body going past its limits and thought that his arms were going to fall off anytime soon. However, he also knew that it was a virtual arena and that the worst scenario would just be him losing the competition. Once he got out of the ring, his body would regenerate. This thought made Gylding more confident as he ignored the pain. In his mind, it was less about losing or winning, but more about leveling up himself. When he started using his first stance in Level 5 Steel Fist, the powerful punch hit Tall Guy right in the chest. At that moment, Tall Guy's face changed as there was no time for him to react. His chest felt like a cannon had exploded against it as he heard a noise and went flying through the air. Before he could stand up, his chest disintegrated. After a while, he found himself standing outside the ring. He looked up at the young man inside the ring, whose entire right arm had been broken into pieces due to the repelled force from the armor. However, the young man still stood unflinchingly inside the ring. His eyes were calm, as if he had expected such an outcome. Player lukewarm assassin player has won. The arena's system announced the results of the competition. This kind of incredibly strenuous act is alright in the arena. However, you better not do such stupid things in the real world. Otherwise, you'll lose your arms for good. Although he knew Gilding did not usually listen to him, he still said what was needed to be said. Don't think that you can solve all these problems with cell repair fluid. The functions of the cell repair fluid on the body works by accelerating your metabolism. Bad injuries will accelerate your metabolism even more, which means you will have a shorter lifespan. For in the monitoring room, the short-haired woman was a little shocked when she saw what had happened in the arena. She knew that Gilding would win, but she did not expect Gilding to use such an extreme method to achieve victory. She was slowly beginning to understand Gilding's purpose in joining matches. Ask him if he wants a new match. The short-haired woman found herself grinning slightly. However, this time, her smile was no longer one of excitement. In the ring, Gilding's arm finished regenerating as a dialogue box popped up in front of his eyes. It read, "Do you want a new match?" Yes. Gilding made the choice without a second thought. This time, your opponent's rank is around 5,000. His strength is so-so, but his special ability is stealth. Do you need my help? Neptune asked. Gilding shook his head slightly and rolled his shoulders. Instantly, his opponent appeared. He was a thin small man, dressed in black from head to toes. His face was covered with a black face mask and on his head was a black headscarf. The only thing one could see on his entire body was his eyes. In addition to this, both his hands were wrapped with white cloths that each held a dagger. His ID was Invisible Gentleness. Upon seeing this ID, Gilding secretly ridiculed him and thought to himself, how can anyone see your gentleness if you're wrapped up from head to toe? He's a professional killer, so you must be careful. Don't get killed by him in a single blow, Neptune commented. He did not wear gloves because wearing gloves meant that there would be less sensitivity between his palms and the dagger. This was why he used a thin layer of cloth instead. Even though the cloth might affect the sensitivity slightly, he could slowly get used to it through long-term training. The black ensemble from head to toe was to facilitate stealthy movements at night. By covering his face and hair, he could avoid being seen by unnecessary witnesses, making it harder to identify him. The opponent's real-life identity could very well be an assassin. This kind of opponent was extremely dangerous, as once they spot a weak point, they would end their foe in a single blow. The pair of daggers were not to be taken lightly either. If he stabbed his opponent in the throat or some other vital point, they would be eliminated on the spot. Gilding became vigilant and activated his defense through Righteous Body the moment he judged his opponent. When his opponent saw Gilding, he did not attack immediately. He seemed to be analyzing Gilding too. After a while, his avatar faded away and disappeared completely from the ring. Where did he go? Gilding was shocked. Although Neptune reminded Gilding that his opponent could hide himself, he did not expect his opponent to be completely traceless. Chapter 34. Gilding's hair stood on end as he waited patiently for his opponent to launch his attack. The opponent this time was indeed a tricky guy. The surface area of the ring was only about 400 to 500 square meters without a single object around him for him to take cover under. Now, the other party was able to disappear without a trace. There were no warning signs, and he left zero clues behind. If he had gotten help from Neptune, he would have easily been able to trace his opponent's whereabouts. However, he believed the battles in this ring were his own, and it would be unfair if he had assistance from others. Once standing in the ring at this ring, he had no idea where his opponent was, so the only thing he could do was wait. When the opponent eventually attacked, then he would be ready to counter. However, professional assassins were well known for keeping their composure. They could hide for countless hours while waiting for their opponent to drop their guard. Even so, this time, the assassin did not have the luxury of waiting around whilst in this ring. If there was a delay before the system would determine it a tie. Invisible Gentleness was well aware of this rule. If you did not initiate an attack yourself, the other party would be unable to fight back. If this situation lasts for more than half an hour, the system would consider it a draw. He waited patiently for about 10 minutes, but never found an opening to strike. Even though the young man before his eyes appeared thin and weak, he was a hard nut built like a pillbox. He knew that if he rushed into action, he would be met with the opponent's crazy counterattack. However, he also knew that the other party was as steady as the great and lofty mountains, and would not reveal a single flaw even if he waited another 20 minutes. Therefore, with no other choice, he finally took a shot. The cold, swift dagger cut through the air and pierced Gylding's throat in an instant. Yet, the fast-killing blow abruptly stopped in place. He looked as Gylding used a single hand to grasp the blade of the dagger. Although the tip of the knife had penetrated Gylding's throat, it had gone less than half a centimeters in before being blocked by Gylding's palm. Gylding's palm appeared to be damaged, but he paid zero attention to it. "You lost." Gylding grinned, as his other cocked and ready fist punched straight into his opponent's waist. Invisible gentleness, his body was broken into pieces the next moment before being reformed once he was outside the ring. Quite a number of onlookers in the circle were unable to make out what had happened in the lightning attack earlier. As such, the scene had to be slowed down for them to clearly see what had transpired. What terrifying reflexes! Many martial artists could not help but sigh. An overwhelming majority of them believed that if they were placed under such circumstances, their throats would have undoubtedly been impaled by the dagger, and they would have been killed instantly. "The strength of his fist is frightening," some of the martial artists lamented. Gylding's single strike earlier had dug a hole in his opponent's body. Even though it was unlikely that it would achieve the same result in the real world, no normal person would be able to withstand its power. For a novice, his reflexes are quite good. In a monitoring room, the short-haired woman nodded in satisfaction. "Miss, should we continue arranging opponents for him?" the big tall man in the black suit that was standing beside her asked. "I have a rough understanding of his arts now. His gene level is not that high, and his current performance is more or less at its limit." "There's no need to investigate further," the short-haired woman said as she shook her head. Then, she turned around and walked out the door. "Let him compete in a normal way." "All right then, miss. Do you want us to record his next few battles?" "Just record the scenes that are worth watching, there's no need for the fillers." The short-haired woman stopped in her tracks and nodded. Without the meddling of the people behind the scenes, the challenges that Gylding received at his new rank of around 5,000 finally normalized. His new opponent's rankings were all lower than his own. There were two ranking rules in the arena. One of them was points ranking, and the other was substitution ranking. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people would follow the path of points ranking, as the system would not randomly assign those that had significant differences in points to compete with one another. Substitution rankings were for those who actively challenged high-ranked players. Once they had won, they would obtain the opponent's rank, and the defeated opponent's ranking would correspondingly drop by one place. However, almost every time, a high-ranked player would find a suitable opponent in advance before entering the ring. After this, they would leave immediately after they were done with the battle to disallow the opportunity to challenge them. As for Gylding's previous battles, it was stated that the system was random. In reality, they had all been manipulated by someone backstage, and he had deliberately been assigned high-ranking players. This situation was unheard of, but it also improved Gylding's ranking to around 5,000. Since Gylding had been standing on the ring, ready to accept new challenges, he had also allowed other low-ranking players the opportunity to challenge him. When they noticed that Gylding's points were not very high, many players who had not seen Gylding in battle earlier assumed that he was a pushover. They assumed he was probably only able to rank highly due to good fortune, which motivated them to press the challenge button. In less than 2 minutes, Gylding received more than 30 challenges, and they were increasing by the second. "Is the system faulty?" Gylding frowned. "Your ranking is too high, and your points are low. Therefore, many of them are assuming that you climbed up because you're lucky, and they want to take the chance to crush you. Moreover, the option you selected was to accept all challenges openly. It's only natural for many to try their luck in defeating you so that they can take your rank." Neptune's brief explanation enlightened Gylding about what was going on. "This situation is a good opportunity to accumulate points. Once the challenge is issued, it's irrevocable unless the challenged party refuses to accept it. This means that even if you later show a terrifying amount of strength, those who had already challenged you can't undo the challenge. In this case, They will only be able to submit themselves to their fate and give the points away. As they were talking, the number of challenges skyrocketed to more than 50. It made Gyuding grin. "Not bad. Let me help you screen your next opponent." The highest ranked one that is currently challenging you ranked at around 6,100. "I feel like these people are not challenging enough for you," Neptune said, feeling somewhat bored. "Then, he'll be next." "It's not good to challenge too many people, as it eats into my cultivation time." Having said that, Gyuding was glad that people were taking the initiative to send him points, since, after all, 1 point was equivalent to 100 star credits. If one were to win 60 battles in a row, they would be able to accumulate 1830 points, which would result in a bountiful amount of wealth. However, if he continued to spend time with these people, the progression of his ultimate arts would be limited. Only when facing a genuinely strong opponent could he quickly improve himself in battle. "You're planning to use this guy to establish yourself, right?" Neptune correctly guessed Gyuding's intentions. "If I don't do this, later on, there will be an endless stream of challenges," Gyuding smirked. "Let's do it." A moment later, a fat man appeared in the ring. He did not look very old, perhaps in his early 20s, and was not tall at all. He laughed soon after laying his eyes on Gyuding. "It's just a kid." Gyuding felt somewhat helpless after receiving this sort of response from the other party. Even if he grew taller, and his body became a little stronger due to cultivating ultimate arts, he would still be on the thinner side amongst his peers. "Lil kiddo, it seems that you're all out of luck." "I'll try and go easy on you," the fatty said as he dashed toward Gyuding. He was using a blitzkrieg strategy. Gyuding stood there with a bitter smile. As the other person gradually approached him, he reloaded his steel fist with the 5th tier's first stance. Then, he struck his opponent's fat belly with all his might. Chapter 35. The fat man looked at the holes that had been blasted through his belly with a look of disbelief plastered across his face. After a moment, his body crumbled into a pile of debris before reassembling outside the ring. That fat body was his ability, which was able to block 50% of the attack. Despite this, he was killed in a split second. Only then did the fat man, who was now standing outside the ring, realize how terrifying his opponent truly was. When they saw that the fat man who had ranked around 6,000th was defeated instantly, those in the crowd who had pressed the challenge button felt a stab of pain in their hearts. Those who stood behind the fat man all that knew how powerful he was, and they all knew about his special ability for the fat man to be killed in an instant. At this point they were afraid that they would be heading into the ring to act as free points. After killing off the fat man, Gyuding selected his next opponent, who was a strong man ranking somewhere around the 7,000s. Out of the many challengers, this man's ranking was second only to the fat man. After the strong man walked onto the stage, he smiled bitterly. He had once challenged the fat man too, and he was annihilated. Back then, he did not get a chance to fight back at all. Now he faced Gyuding, who had killed off the fat man in one swift move, so he knew he did not stand a chance. He cursed himself silently for acting brashly. He thought it would be an easy win when he clicked the challenge button. He did not expect his opponent to not only not be as soft as a persimmon, but instead be as tough as nails. Nevertheless, after sending the challenge request, you could not back out unless the request is rejected by your opponent. He only knew that Gyuding had accepted his challenge after he stepped into the ring. "I'll just die and be reincarnated quickly." The strong man made up his mind. He thought about the many others who, like him, had chosen to challenge Gyuding on impulse as well, and it made him feel a little better. As these thoughts were passing through the strong man's mind, it only took split second for the deed to be done. He did not spend a lot of time in the ring. When he rushed toward Gyuding, he was killed with a single punch. The whole process did not take more than 5 seconds. "Hey, muscle man, how does it feel to be knocked out instantly?" someone asked in a mocking tone. The strong man looked over to see that it was the fat man. "Didn't the same thing happen to you, fatty? The last time we fought, you abused me pretty terribly. I see you finally got what you deserved." "That kid looks so young. Who would have thought him to be so powerful?" It's almost as if he had taken a strength-enhancing pill. The fat man was smiling as if he did not mind the fact that he had lost the fight. He had spent quite some time in the arena and had participated in more than 7,000 competitions. Therefore, his numerous encounters with all kinds of opponents, coupled with his optimistic nature, ensured that his mind was already at peace. I was being too brash as well. I should have watched one of the opponent's battle videos first. The strong man smiled bitterly. He, like Yu Ding, usually took the more offensive route. He was used to using strong attacks to crush his opponents. This time, however, he was the one who was crushed, and by an opponent who was a youngster. He found this a little hard to accept. Seeing the strong man's expressions, it was as if the fat man knew what he was thinking. Don't think too much about it, this kid is a freak. The arts he used was terrifying. He might even be a super genius trained by the Universal Federation government. In the future, he might even become as well known as Cold Blood. I wonder what all the youngsters are eating nowadays. They're all so fierce. The strong man could not help but sigh and say, I heard some news recently that Cold Blood encountered a Commodore from the Universal Federation government on the new route. The two of them fought for a day, and it ended with the Commodore running away in defeat. At that moment, Yu Ding was in the ring defeating many opponents continuously. Just as he was approaching his 20th consecutive win, he heard Neptune speak. There was some big news just now. Cold Blood encountered a Commodore on the new route. The two of them had a huge fight and it ended when the Commodore running away after being defeated. Based on what was in the video, the Commodore was almost killed, but he managed to escape using some special tactics. Meanwhile, Cold Blood only sustained some minor injuries. Seems like his danger level has increased again, so I reckon the bounty on him will increase again very soon. Upon hearing this, Yu Ding grew more eager. Until now, he still had not had a bounty put on him yet. He was looking forward to seeing the bounty on his head being spread the way Cold Blood's was. Yu Ding's opponents were sent into the ring one by one, and they were then killed on the spot, one after the other. He easily achieved 20 consecutive wins. Yu Ding was unstoppable, and he quickly attained 30 consecutive wins, then 40 consecutive wins, 50 consecutive wins, 60 consecutive wins, 70 consecutive wins. As he stood there waiting for the 80th round, he saw that no one else was brought into the ring. When they saw the fat man getting killed instantly, there were already 60 people who have pressed the challenge button and were unable to revoke their challenge. However, when the people behind them who were thinking about challenging Yu Ding saw the live footage of him in the ring, they immediately withdrew their hands from the challenge button and secretly breathed a sigh of relief that they had been slow to hit the button. Is there no one else? Yu Ding raised his brow. If that's the case, I'll only be getting the points for 70 consecutive wins. It seems like I'll have to wait until I come again next time. The points gathered for less than 100 consecutive wins were calculated according to every 10 consecutive wins. This meant that the number of consecutive wins had to be 10, 20, 30, etc. to obtain the accumulated points for consecutive wins. If Yu Ding had completed the 80th round, he could have obtained the points for 80 consecutive wins, which was 3,240 points. However, Yu Ding had only reached his 79th round, so he only obtained the accumulated points for 70 consecutive wins in addition to the points gathered from rounds 71 to 79, which was an additional 9 points. Therefore, in total, he had only gained 2,494 points. Just quit, Yu Ding. Your spaceship has encountered some problems. Neptune sounded a bit unsettled. Is there a malfunction? When he heard Neptune's tone, Yu Ding felt a little uneasy. It's not a malfunction, it has encountered the aftermath of an interstellar storm. Neptune's tone began to sound a little urgent. I'm going to help you cut the link. Otherwise, if the spaceship is hit, the electromagnetic influence will cause damage to your spirit. As Neptune said this, he cut Yu Ding's link to the arena. The spectators in the arena who were watching Yu Ding were surprised when he suddenly disappeared from the ring on his 80th round. They all assumed that Yu Ding would at least finish the 80th round and get the accumulated points for the consecutive wins, even though there was no one left to challenge at that moment. If he waited a little longer, the system would have automatically assigned an opponent to him. They never expected Yu Ding to retreat so suddenly. What happened? Why did he suddenly get disconnected? In the monitoring room backstage, a tall, brawny man in a tuxedo frowned slightly when he saw what happened. It's not a system malfunction. I reckon something urgent happened and he had to quit the arena suddenly. After checking the system, a technician found out that Yu Ding had quit on his own accord. This kid. The man in the tuxedo did not expect this to happen. Meanwhile, Yu Ding, who had just returned to reality, was about to face a difficult trial. Chapter 36. In the cabin, Gilding could feel the Kitty Hawk model shaking slightly. The aftermath is still some distance away from us. So far, it hasn't affected us greatly. Neptune still sounded a little pessimistic. I've already changed the Kitty Hawk model's route, but according to the calculations based on the Kitty Hawk model's maximum speed, we still can't totally avoid the effects of the aftermath. The best we can do is to evade the epicenter of the impact as much as possible. What will happen if we are affected? Gilding had heard of some things related to the interstellar course when he was in the basic military academy. From what he heard, encounters with interstellar storms were quite serious. For example, the spacecraft would disintegrate, and most life forms would be ripped into pieces in an instant. The spacecraft's instruments will stop working. If we're lucky, the spacecraft will only be slightly damaged, but it will deviate from its course. If we're unlucky, the spacecraft might get hit by stray meteorites and be destroyed. Neptune continued, I will do my best to navigate the spacecraft and evade the meteorites. However, you should be mentally prepared in the event that the spacecraft is destroyed. What can I do? Even though Gilding had taken spacecraft piloting as an elective back in the basic military academy, after a year of classes, he had only gone through 3 lessons with simulated piloting, while the rest were all theory lessons. Moreover, he had undergone those classes when he first entered the basic military academy, which was more than 2 years ago. Therefore, he knew that he would not do a better job at piloting the spacecraft than Neptune. You should enter the escape cabin first. Fortunately, I had helped you to choose a D-class escape cabin which is better quality. Back then, I considered the possibilities of something like this happening. Even if the spacecraft is destroyed, it shouldn't be too big of the problem. The escape cabin that Neptune had chosen back then possessed a short-distance flight function and was controllable too. It cost almost 500,000 star credits, which was why Gilding objected at the time. However, Neptune had said, those who often travel through the cosmos know that the escape cabin is more important than the aircraft itself. If the aircraft is destroyed, you can buy a new one, but if the escape cabin is destroyed, you won't ever get a second chance. After hearing his words, Gilding decided to compromise and let the merchant install this escape cabin. Just as Gilding was heading into the aftermath of the interstellar storm, almost all the video channels of Skyriver sector started simultaneously broadcasting the same piece of news. There has been a collision between Gulen and Great Luminance of the Skyriver sector. This has caused a large-scale interstellar storm. Residents of nearby planets are advised to not panic and to enter the corresponding areas to take refuge in accordance with the instructions of the local government. Spacecraft nearby are advised to change course as soon as possible and leave the affected areas. This interstellar storm is estimated to end in 20 days. Please pay close attention to your safety during this period. As soon as the storm ends, we will make the corresponding announcements. This short video broadcast caused a lot of people to panic. Gulen was an ancient star that had existed for more than tens of billions of years, and was one of the biggest stars in the Skyriver sector. On the other hand, Great Luminance had only existed for around 2 billion years, but it was the biggest star in the Skyriver sector. Even though scientists had considered the collision of these two stars very early on, according to their calculations back then, the probability of these two planets colliding was relatively small, standing at less than 1%. Even so, such unlikely events often occurred throughout the history of science. There was also a saying in the scientific community that went, many times it is unreliable to speak with probability. The collision of the stars would also cause the two different small galaxies to be utterly destroyed. Fortunately, the two stars' temperatures were so high that it caused the surface temperatures of the various planets within the small galaxies to be well in the thousands of degrees. It was completely unsuitable for the survival of living beings, so they were all no habitable zones. 3. The position of Gulen and Great Luminance. Palmer was shocked when she heard the news, then immediately responded, Gilding's ship should pass through here, so his current position should be here. Palmer's wristwatch was no ordinary wristwatch. It was a high-end product that was worth millions of star credits and had many functions which the common civilian wristwatch did not. Thus, it took little effort for her to calculate the possible position of the Kitty Hawk model. Looking at the location of the red dot on the projection of the wristwatch, She saw that there was some overlap with the area of the interstellar storm's aftermath that had been shown in the broadcast just now. There was a nervous tremor in her heart, and she quickly dialed Gilding's number. "The person you've called is currently unavailable," the voice from the wristwatch's communication headset reported. She was unsatisfied, and called a few more times, only to receive the same response every time. Feeling helpless, she dialed Modikan's number. "Palmer, what's wrong?" Under normal circumstances, it was rare for Palmer to call him. Even when she had encountered problems regarding the refining of medicine, she would usually just leave a message and wait for him to reply. Unless she was having an emergency, she would not call him. "Teacher, there was a video broadcast just now about the news of the collision between Gulen and Great Luminance. All the nearby districts are being affected by a large-scale interstellar storm. I saw that too. Sarul might be slightly affected by the aftermath, but it will be cut off by the atmosphere, so you don't have to worry about it." Modikan thought Palmer was panicking because of the news, and that was why she had called him, so he comforted her immediately. He even laughed to himself. "Women sure are timid." "That's not what I wanted to say. When I saw the video, I suddenly recalled that Gilding's route would be passing through the area, so I calculated his current position. The results of the calculations show that he's currently in a district which might be affected by the aftermath of the interstellar storm. When I tried to call him just now, the calls could not get through. This kind of prompt will only appear when it's a place where the Skynet signal can't reach, right?" Palmer explained hastily. "No way, give me a moment." "What kind of spacecraft is he on?" "I'll calculate it too." Modikan also felt his chest tighten. The apprentice which he had been so close to getting was now encountering this kind of situation, so it was making him nervous too. However, he could not believe Palmer's calculations and needed to check them himself, just to make sure. "It's the Kittyhawk model." Just as Palmer finished speaking, Modikan transferred the data of the Kittyhawk model into his calculations tool. In less than 2 seconds, the results were out, as a red dot appeared on the projection of the star map. It was the same as Palmer's calculations results, and was within the area of the interstellar storm's aftermath. How could this be? Modikan was in disbelief and calculated it again. The position of the red dot remained unchanged. "Gilding will be fine, right?" Palmer asked cautiously upon hearing the silence from the other end of the line. After a moment of silence, Modikan finally accepted the reality of the situation. "We'll only be able to ask for help from those on nearby planets to search for them after the interstellar storm subsides. There's no point in us being anxious now." He hung up Palmer's call, and Modikan clenched his fist. It was not an easy feat to find such a talented pharmacologist in the Skyriver sector. He better not die. Meanwhile, on the other side, Gilding had already climbed into the escape cabin. The Kittyhawk was about to welcome the first wave of the interstellar storm's aftermath's attacks. Chapter 37. Inside the spacecraft, Gilding had already hidden in the escape cabin. Under the influence of the hypnotic gas, he quickly fell asleep. He knew he would only cause more trouble for Neptune in a situation like this, so he decided to leave the rest in Neptune's hands. Neptune had entered a state of high-speed computing. Because of the restrictions of Gilding's gene level, there were many limits of authority that he had not yet removed, as even the basic detection function could only extend to about 100 meters. In addition to this, the network had been affected by the electromagnetic waves caused by the interstellar storm. Therefore, there was no way they could obtain real-time information about the interstellar storm from external sources. Now, he could only navigate based on the spacecraft's radar and going off some of his earlier predictions. He launched the Kittyhawk model into hyperspeed flight mode, intending to get as far away from the storm's center as possible. Due to the high speed at which the spacecraft was traveling at, it started to show signs of instability, but this was all within Neptune's expectations. The Kittyhawk model was a cheap modified model, and its performance was limited, so it was already pretty impressive that it could be pushed like this. However, it was unlikely that it could go any faster than this. Half an hour passed, and there was finally a blip on the radar. It was the group of meteorites that had been brought over by the interstellar storm. Neptune calmly calculated the trajectory of each meteorite, and then slightly lowered the speed of the Kittyhawk model. In its hyperspeed state, it would be easy to make errors with regards to the Kitty Hawk model's trajectory. Neptune did not wish to see the spacecraft being torn apart by the meteorites because of such errors, so decided to sacrifice its speed so that they could safely pass through this wave of meteorites safely before re-evaluating their situation. Within a few minutes, the meteorites began drawing close. Meteorite fragments of various sizes were densely packed together, with the data from Neptune's statistics showing that there were a total of 11,281 pieces of meteorite fragments. The trajectory of each fragment had been accurately calculated, as the Kitty Hawk model's optimum path was simultaneously calculated as well. Even though the spacecraft was not very big, because of how densely packed the meteorite fragments were, it was impossible to totally avoid the onslaught of meteorites. Neptune activated the spacecraft's energy shield, and carefully controlled the movement of the Kitty Hawk model, thus evading the impact of hundreds of large-sized meteorites. Bang! The spacecraft's shield was soon hit by a meteorite fragment, and the energy shield dampened slightly. Neptune immediately adjusted the spacecraft's course as, after being hit, the spacecraft's operation needed to be fine-tuned again. The energy shield consumed a lot of energy just by being kept up and running. Every time it was hit, the amount of energy it consumed increased a few times over. According to Neptune's estimations, the Kitty Hawk model's shield could only withstand 12 more hits like the one before. After this, it would run out of energy. Even though this was the best trajectory that Neptune could calculate, it was still inevitable for them to have to endure 8 more hits like the previous one as they charged through the wave of meteorites. 20 minutes passed by very quickly, and the Kitty Hawk model managed to survive as they passed through the wave of meteorite fragments. At this point, there was only a thin layer of energy shield left. Neptune deactivated the energy shield and pulled up the star map of the district nearby. He knew that he had to find a planet to land the spacecraft as soon as possible, preferably one with oxygen. This was because the Kitty Hawk model needed a sufficient amount of energy to create oxygen. If the energy was depleted, the oxygen within the Kitty Hawk model would only last Gylding 3 more days, and this was if the spacecraft was in perfect condition. If the spacecraft was damaged and oxygen was leaking out, Gylding might not even last another 24 hours. Neptune prayed silently, "Don't let there be a second wave of meteorites." If a second wave of meteorites appeared, the spacecraft's energy might be totally depleted. If that happened, Gylding would be in grave danger. However, things rarely went according to people's wishes. Neptune's prayers were not answered. Very soon the second wave of meteorites appeared on the spacecraft's radar. The size of this wave of meteorites was more than 3 times the size of the previous one. Neptune began to frantically calculate his escape strategy. If we force our way through, the spacecraft will be destroyed. Neptune analyzed all the possible outcomes in detail. If that happens, all I can do is to reduce the escape cabin's temperature and allow Gylding to enter a temporary comatose state, reducing his oxygen consumption as I direct the escape cabin to a nearby planet. If the power of the escape cabin is insufficient, or it encounters more meteorites, there will be no chance that Gylding survives. Right now, the spacecraft has less than 30% energy left, and I can't find a habitable planet to land on in such a short amount of time. A suitable landing spot would not only need to have oxygen, but ideally, it should also have the same gravity as Sarul. The surface temperature cannot exceed what a human can handle either. Humans are such fragile life forms. Neptune could not help but sigh at the thought of all these conditions. There's no other way. The most energy-efficient option will be to float along with the meteorites. But I'm afraid Gylding might not be able to reach Feniyuan at this point. When Neptune thought about this, he could not help but swear out loud, "Oh, to hell with Feniyuan. Survival is more important than anything else." Recently, he had learned quite a lot of human terms, with most of them being impolite words. This proved that it was not just humans who learned these kinds of terms faster, but artificial superintelligence like Neptune did as well. However, it was funny to hear Neptune swear in his childlike voice. If Gylding had heard it, he definitely would have rolled over laughing. After picking what he thought was the best decision, Neptune directed the Kitty Hawk model to evade the impact of several meteorites. He found a larger meteorite on the Kitty Hawk model's detection radar which was located nearby and changed the spacecraft's course. He directed the Kitty Hawk model to land on the large meteorite, then turned off the Kitty Hawk model's engine. He did not wake Gyuding, as Gyuding in his active state would consume more oxygen and would require food to sustain himself. In his sleeping state, not only could he reduce his oxygen consumption, he could save on food as well. Neptune did not know where Gyuding's final landing point would be, so when faced with an unknown situation such as this, it was best to conserve oxygen and food to maximize the length of time which Gyuding could stay alive. Within the Kitty Hawk model, almost all the hardware had stopped working except for the oxygen being supplied into the escape cabin where Gyuding was located, as well as the radar on which the densely packed red dots remained. The radar was left on because Neptune had to use the feedback from the radar to determine their position by comparing it with the star map. Because the Skynet's network was blocked by the electromagnetic waves, Neptune could only use this crude method to determine their location. If they were in the channel of the previous star map, then Neptune could use the various information marked on the previous star map to find a planet that was suitable for them to land on. However, Neptune's idea soon fell through. The Kitty Hawk model stayed on the meteorite for 3 days as the trajectory of this wave of meteorites looked to break away from the channel of the previous star map very soon. Not only were these meteorites breaking away from the Sky River sector, they were about to plunge into the Dark District, which was infected by various viruses. Along the way, Neptune could not find a single planet where the spacecraft could land, so he had no choice but to follow the meteorites into the Dark District. Chapter 38. The Federation government had different classifications for star sectors under its jurisdiction. For example, the red star sectors referred to the extremely dangerous areas. The black star sectors referred to areas under the jurisdiction of the interstellar pirates, and lastly, the golden star sectors referred to highly developed star sectors. Meanwhile, gray star sectors represented abandoned star sectors. Generally speaking, gray star sectors were areas where there had once been intelligent life. However, for some reason, the amount of intelligent life within the star sector had sharply dropped. Hence, there was no need for the Federation government to send people there to manage them anymore. In their current condition whereby the network was blocked, Neptune had no way of finding relevant information about this star sector. He could only use the radar system originally installed in the spacecraft to detect the existence of living bodies. Fortunately, the radar on the Kitty Hawk model was a new model made in recent years. Thus, it had the hardware to detect the existence, as well as the specific location, of life forms nearby. The result of the radar sweep was quickly transmitted back. After seeing the result, Neptune was slightly surprised. Within the detection range, there was a planet with a large population. Although Neptune was a little surprised, he did not have time to investigate further. The presence of a population indicated that there was suitable levels of oxygen and gravity, making it ideal to use as a pit stop. Since Gyuding only needed a temporary place to rest before they set off again after avoiding the interstellar storm, Neptune quickly chose a place to land. As the huge meteorite passed by the planet, Neptune steered the Kitty Hawk model away from the meteorite whilst simultaneously activating the energy barrier, enduring several impacts in the process. Then, the spacecraft finally descended toward the target planet. When the spacecraft entered the atmosphere, Neptune tested the composition of the planet's atmosphere. The test results showed that the oxygen content here was similar to that of Sarul, meaning that Gyuding could breathe normally. As for the gravitational strength, he calculated it against their rate of descent and found it to be about 1.5 times that of the Earth. For Gyuding, whose cell index was close to 20 points, the effect was minimal. Under Neptune's guidance, the spaceship fell quickly into the ocean. This Kitty Hawk model had been completely destroyed as most functions were no longer operational except for the radar. As for food and water, Gyuding had cleverly moved them into the escape capsule earlier. The enclosed escape capsule popped out of the spaceship and began floating on the surface of the sea. Only now did Neptune finally wake Gyuding up. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Gyuding stretched his body. That nap was really comfortable. Is the interstellar storm gone? Not yet. The Kitty Hawk model has been completely destroyed. We were brought into the gray star sector by the interstellar storm. Neptune gave a brief explanation. I have made a preliminary check on the condition of this planet. It is suitable for human survival and there are also living beings here. You mean, we broke away from the new route? Gilding did not question Neptune's decisions. He was more concerned about whether or not he was still on the new route. Yes, this was already the best options. The first wave of meteorite attacks consumed more than 60% of the Kittyhawk model's energy. If we did not come here, I am afraid that the Kittyhawk model would have already been disintegrated. It was torn to pieces. How long will it take to return to the new route? Gilding was most desperate to get back on track. We can wait for the interstellar storm to pass and for the electromagnetic disturbance to disappear. Then, I can send a message and we will await rescue. According to the previous official statement, this interstellar storm will last at least 20 days. Now, 3 days have passed. Neptune could understand Gilding's mood. However, he could not help the situation. That is to say, there are 17 more days to go. Gilding mumbled. Suddenly his stomach cried out. He woke up after being in the escape capsule for 3 days. He did not feel hungry at first, but now he quickly realized that he needed to replenish himself. He took out a toothpaste-like tube of compressed food and squeezed it into his mouth a few times. Then, he chugged some water. In the early days of interstellar voyage, many foodstuff would be compressed into a toothpaste-like substance to prevent the food debris from floating about in weightless aircraft. This was because it would be troublesome if it was inhaled into the lungs. Many advanced spaceships were now equipped with a gravity detection system, so this kind of problem could be avoided, allowing all kinds of food to be eaten casually. However, back then, Gilding could not afford a spaceship with a gravity detection system. Gilding, who was eating compressed food, suddenly saw that there were fish in the water not far away. He suddenly felt that the food in his mouth was tasteless. He wanted to catch a fish to add to his meal. After undressing as he prepared to jump into the water, Gilding was suddenly stopped by Neptune. That fish seems a little weird. Please don't go down yet. I will send you a video I just opened. Neptune said this while he projected a video of a fish. Neptune himself had detected this as he could detect everything in their surroundings within 100 meters. It seems that this fish should not be eaten. Gilding sighed after watching the video. In the video, the fish was about 30 centimeters long and had a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. It seemed to be competing for territory with another fish. Soon, the winner was decided. The fish with the slightly longer body bit its opponent's head and tore it apart. After this, only half of its opponent's head remained. However, within 10 seconds, its opponent's body was completely devoured. This fish does not only look ugly, but is also very violent. Gilding could not help but sigh. Help me check if there are other fish that can be eaten. After this, Neptune pulled out several videos, all of which were of different kinds of fish. Each one looked fiercer than before as Gilding slowly lost his appetite. After watching these videos, Gilding noticed one thing in common. All these fish had mouths filled with sharp teeth. When one was fighting for territory, they would not care if the other was of the same kind. They would fight aggressively until death. Is everything here like this? Are there any kinds of normal fish that can be eaten? Gilding asked helplessly. Do you think those fish can survive in this kind of water? Neptune asked in reply. Even if it lived here before, I'm afraid it would have quickly been eaten up by the other fish. It seems that I can only eat this kind of unseasoned compressed food. After unsuccessfully finding a side dish to add to his meal, Gilding, being a typical foodie, was a little depressed. This planet is a little weird. The number of living beings detected by the radar before numbered in the billions. This star sector is obviously a gray star sector, so technically it should be difficult to find a planet with any living bodies at all. Neptune was skeptical about this. However, the situation was dire, so he could not be picky after encountering the first inhabitable planet in their 3 days of drifting. Neptune, were those fish just now infected with a virus? Gilding suddenly remembered that a similar situation had occurred in the virology class he had attended in the military academy. Chapter 39. Gilding only took a semester of the virology course. Due to the sudden resignation of the virology professor, the military academy could not recruit a second virology teacher in time. Therefore, the course was left unfinished. Later, Gilding also heard some rumors about the teacher. It was said that the little old man who did not look particularly amazing was once famous in the cosmic sea. Gilding merely overheard this rumor. He had never taken it seriously. For him, the identity of the little old man was not important. What was important was that he, who previously had no interest in virology at all, became interested after listening to the lessons taught by the little man. So much so that after the classes were over, Yuding would occasionally run to the library to read up on virology-related materials. Besides, virology was a branch of pharmacology. Therefore, Yuding was not against becoming a pharmacologist. After hearing Yuding's statement, Neptune was silent for a moment. I also suspected it, but there is no information about this virus in my database. The closest virus, codenamed X, was used as a biological weapon in a paleontological civilization. It can greatly enhance the strength of the infected and can evolve by engulfing gene fragments. It also contains all DNA and RNA viruses, but will still not attack each other. Yet, looking at the situation with these fish, they seem to devour all life they come across, not even sparing a thought for their own kind. Some researchers of paleontological civilizations believe that the virus has instincts and conscious desire for survival and expansion. Therefore, people infected with similar viruses were generally not invaded by each other. Seeing these fish in the sea swallowing each other in this way, it's obvious that it greatly reduces the possibility of the virus spreading wildly. Therefore, I didn't think they were infected by the virus at all, Neptune explained. But this crazy behavior cannot be explained in any other way than being infected. Whatever the case may be, this planet is definitely not be a safe landing point. You should put on your combat armor, just in case. Yuding summoned his combat armor and wrapped himself tightly in it. In this unknown situation, even though he was usually a bit careless, he knew better than to let his guard down. A moment later, Neptune's voice sounded again, this time with a hint of surprise. I just received some good news. Has the interstellar storm stopped? Yuding guessed somewhat uncertainly. No, how could that happen so fast? You are thinking too much. Neptune laughed. Although the outer planetary communication is blocked, I tried to connect to the inner network of this planet, and it worked. Could you be mistaken? This gray star sector is close to the Sky River sector and has been abandoned for more than 50 years. That is to say, there has been no human life on this planet for at least 50 years. How is it possible that the network is still available? If the technology of this planet was sufficiently developed and the use of solar energy had reached a sufficient level, it's possible for it to sustain the hardware for 500 years, let alone 50 years. Neptune felt that Yuding was looking down on the power of technology. And, fortunately, one of the machines which is still in operation is a main piece of equipment at a scientific laboratory. Not only is there a lot of historical scientific research data, they also have all the monitoring records regarding the years of infection on this planet. Actually, I would like to know if there are any functioning spaceships on this planet. Yuding was thinking that if there were any intact spaceships on this planet, then he did not have to wait for the federal government to send someone to rescue him. After all, his current identity was that of an interstellar pirate, even if he was not even worth half a star coin as bounty right now. When thinking about the bounty, Yuding was a little depressed. In just a few days after leaving Zerul, he had fallen to a place where even the birds did not sht. He did not even know when he could leave, let alone do something big and dynamic that would astonish the federal government. There is a spacecraft factory near the port. However, as a matter of safety, you must dock on solid ground as soon as possible. According to the monitoring records, there are many terrible things in the sea with combat power at least comparable to that of a 5th-order genome bearer. It may even be close to a 6th-order genome warrior. Neptune said this, but did not seem to be very anxious. But that thing is afraid of light, so it will not come out during the day. Having said that, at night, you will be in a very dangerous situation. How long is it until nightfall? Yuding understood the gravity of the situation. Even with extreme body technique and equipment to increase his combat power, he was only comparable to a 2nd-order genome warrior. There was basically no chance of beating a 3rd-order genome bearer. In the case of the 4th order and above, there was a high probability that he would be killed instantly. No matter what kind of monster this was, if it was comparable to the combat power of a 5th-order genome bearer, his chances of survival was basically non-existent. The time it takes for this planet to complete a full rotation is about 70 hours. There are 40 in the daytime, and now there are about 35 hours left until nightfall. Neptune had already grasped some information of this planet. The coast closest to you is in the southeast, about 2,000 kilometers away. You're quite fortunate. The energy of the escape capsule is just enough to get you to the sea level. Driving on the water, it will take about 10 hours to reach the shore. Gilding looked around. He realized that he could not distinguish direction on this planet. He scratched his head. I am still depending on you. Is the rotational direction of the planet from west to east too? Yes, so the star appears in the east every morning. Neptune knew that Gilding had asked this because he could not tell the direction at all. He took control of the escape capsule and sped towards the southeast, drawing a long white line of foam across the sea. Gilding felt that these 10 hours was unusually long. The space inside the escape capsule was limited. He could only lie inside it without moving. During high-speed traveling, if his body was not secured, it was likely that he would be thrown out. The escape capsule was transparent except for the bottom. Thus, Gilding saw a variety of fish along the way, all of which were in a crazed and fierce state. Many of them were even bigger than the escape capsule. After seeing the escape capsule, they chased crazily until they were eventually tired out. After surviving for 10 hours in the escape capsule, Gilding heard Neptune's voice again. We have reached the shore. After opening the hatch, Gilding sat up and let out a long breath. We finally arrived. All the energy in the escape capsule has been exhausted. You have to rely on your feet for the rest of the way. Neptune let out another piece of bad news. How far is that shipyard from here? Gilding knew it was time to train his physical abilities. It is probably more than 600 kilometers away. Neptune gave a rough estimate. I have seen your physical fitness test results, which is 5 hours per 100 kilometers. After running, you need to rest for at least half an hour to recover. With the various conditions that you may encounter on the road, you are expected to take at least 2 days to arrive. After placing food and water into the storage space, Gilding began to run following Neptune's directions. Chapter 40. There had been no human life on this planet for decades, allowing the flora to flourish. Not far away from the coastline, there was a forest. The area of this forest is very large, making it impossible to bypass it. You should go straight through it, although it is definitely more dangerous than being on the beach, Neptune suggested. Not long after Gilding had begun running, he got the feeling as though he were being watched. The creature staring it bore a ghastly killing intention. Gilding was born with a great sensitivity to killing intent, so he was aware of it right off the bat. A monster is staring at you. Be careful. At this time, Neptune also became alert as the other party had entered Neptune's detection range. Due to the limit of his detection range, his awareness was actually a step slower than that of Gilding's. However, his detection was much more detailed than Gilding's simple hunch. It's just at the level of first-order gene body. If you want to fight, try to finish it off as quickly as possible to avoid attracting other virus-infected creatures. You should also pay attention not to touch the bodily fluids. The information in the scientific research room shows that the early stage of this virus is spread through body fluids. Got it? Gilding nodded slightly. He did not slow down at all. If he could get rid of the guy by leaving it in his dust, then there was no need to waste time fighting it. After stalking for a while, the pair of eyes behind Gilding finally attacked as it could not hold back anymore. Only then did Gilding see the beast, which was a huge feline creature. It had 3 eyes, but did not have the elegance of an ordinary feline. It was covered with muscles, such that even its black fur was sparse. Gilding turned his body around. He lashed out with a backhand strike, hitting the head of the giant feline. The mutated beast was instantly killed. Gilding did not even slow down as he trudged on. However, he could not help but criticize, are all the creatures on this planet so ugly looking? Don't forget that you are also on this planet too, Neptune kindly reminded. Gilding choked when he heard this. He did not say anything for a while. Gilding encountered many similar creatures, mostly ugly, like they had been mutated by radiation. They were all killed by Gilding in a single blow without any delay. However, Gilding vaguely felt a sense of unease as the sky gradually dimmed. Neptune soon confirmed that his uneasiness was justified. At night, the fighting power of these creatures will double. Some powerful creatures who are sleeping during the day will also wake up at night and look for food. According to the remaining research data, this virus is afraid of ultraviolet radiation and hates high temperatures. It also likes humid and cold environments. Therefore, my suggestion is to find a safe place to hide. This forest is their territory and your detection range is limited. How will you find a safe place? Gylding felt that Neptune's proposal was not reliable. I have a map of this forest. There is an active volcano about 5 kilometers ahead. The ground temperature is very high, making it a place where those infected with the virus will probably not go. Neptune knew the weaknesses of these virus-infected creatures, so he had found a safe point for Gylding beforehand. A few minutes later, Gylding rushed to the base of the active volcano. There were several virus-infected creatures wandering at the foot of the volcano. However, they did not dare to climb any further. Gylding rushed straight up by climbing to the mouth of the volcano, filling his nose with the pungent smell of sulfur. He looked down. Within the volcano, the magma was bubbling like boiling water. This volcano won't erupt, right? Gylding could not help asking. There will be signs before the eruption. You can rest assured that you will definitely be able to escape if that were to happen. It's better than having you be chased and killed by those virus-infected creatures all night. Without finishing his sentence, Neptune fell silent. There is a person under this volcano. Neptune suddenly shouted. It doesn't look like they were infected by the virus. Neptune spoke while the video of the other party was projected in front of Gylding's eyes. It was a little girl who looked around the age of 13 and 14. She looked beautiful and sweet. However, her clothes were torn apart. Her red hair was also messy. As she slept, her appearance reminded Gylding of the little beggar who begged along the street of Sarul. She can sleep in this kind of environment? How does she do it? Gylding felt disbelief. There were a lot of toxic gases like sulfur dioxide near the volcano. Moreover, it was at least a few hundred degrees inside, enough to roast ordinary people. However, looking at the state of the other person, she seemed to be enjoying her sleep. Her wristwatch has an air purification function and temperature adjustment function. Neptune explained, so, she will not be poisoned, nor does she have to be afraid of the ambient temperature. She shouldn't be an infected person, right? Gylding asked uncertainly. Looking at the operating state of her wristwatch, she should be alright. People infected by this virus will only have the instinct to kill, with there being no need to sleep at all. Neptune could only make a speculative judgment based on the knowledge he had. I'm saying hello. Gylding grinned. He threw a pebble into the hole after picking it up from his feet. Plop. The stone made a sound after falling into the magma. The little girl suddenly turned over and sat up. With a long sniper rifle in her hand, she aimed at Gylding and started shooting. Catching Gylding off guard, he quickly dodged. However, a bullet still grazed Gylding's arm, drawing a streak of blood on his arm. Stepping back, Gylding shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you human?" The girl seemed a little surprised. She climbed up from the bottom of the volcano in just a few jumps. Gylding realized that, although the other party looked young, her strength was incredible. He laughed. If I'm not human, what else would I be? Do you have food? The girl's second reaction also caught him off guard. Just some compressed food, Gylding said. While taking out the tube of compressed food that he had eaten before, he handed it to the other party. The girl picked it up and squeezed the entire tube of compressed food into her mouth. After she was finished, she squeezed again from the bottom of the tube. Gylding passed her a bottle of water. The little girl took a few sips. This was the third time she spoke. I'm sorry about what happened just now. I thought you were a virus-infected monster. I've been constantly keeping alert these past few days and it has become a habit. I would instinctively shoot even when the changes in my surroundings are minute. How long have you been on this planet? Gylding was curious about her. About 10 days or so. The little girl gave her answer after thinking for a while. Have you been hiding here all this time? Gylding was a little surprised. It was not surprising that Neptune knew the weaknesses of these virus-infected creatures as he was already connected to the planet's network, yet this little girl knew about it too. This forest is too big. It's as if there's no end to it. I can't get out at all. I accidentally discovered that those infected with the virus do not dare to come near this place, so I had no choice but to stay here. The little girl quelled Gylding's suspicions. My name is Gylding. What is your name? Gylding remembered that he did not even know the name of the other person. Lilioth. Chapter 41. Lilioth was only 14 years old. She kept being extremely reticent about her origins. Gylding tried to ask her some questions, but when he saw her keeping silent, he stopped. He knew that everyone had their own secrets, so he never liked to pry into the lives of others. However, Gilding knew that Lilioth's identity was not so simple. She had 2 sets of bronze-grade combat armor of her own. One was a full-body combat armor while the other was a firearm type, special combat armor. The price of a bronze-grade combat armor was at least 1 billion star credits. As for the firearm type special combat armor, they were amongst the most valuable of the combat armors. It would have costed at least 3 billion star credits. On top of that, the bronze-grade combat armors themselves were things that could not normally be found in the market. They were extremely hard to come by in the market. Lilioth's wristwatch, embedded with 3 pure white stones, was a luxurious version of the A-grade wristwatch. Gilding still remembered watching the advertisement of this wristwatch. He vaguely remembered that this watch seemed to be called Angel's Love. As for the market price, it seemed to be around 3 billion star credits. At that time, it was also said to be limited edition. There were only 1,000 pieces in the entire Dragonsaur Cosmic Nation. Every sign indicated that Lilioth was rich. If he was a person with bad intentions, his head would be filled with thoughts of murder and robbery at that moment. However, for Gilding, other party was just a helpless little girl. How did you wind up on this planet? Lilioth had some concern about Gilding's identity. She had passed through several star sectors, and, along the way, many people had malevolent thoughts towards her. I was brought here by the interstellar storm. Gilding felt that there was nothing to explain. He spent most of his time asleep throughout the whole journey, not knowing what had transpired in between. Is your spaceship still here? Lilioth perked up at the answer. It's been destroyed, so I plan to go to the shipyard to see if there are any intact spaceships. There is a shipyard on this planet? How did you know? My watch couldn't locate its position, let alone know any information of this planet. Lilioth was a little taken aback as, in her opinion, the watch on Gilding's wrist was just an ordinary civilian wristwatch. Its functionality was definitely not as good as the one she had. The Grey Star Sector cannot be located because after the federal government gave up on the Star Sector, the relevant information was not publicly updated. Only some information of when the Star Sectors had not yet been abandoned decades ago can be accessed. However, the interstellar storm blocked the network signals recently and there was no way to log onto the Skynet to obtain the relevant information. Gilding did not explain how he knew there was a shipyard on this planet. After Lilioth finished listening, she did not press further as she hid many secrets of her own. When the other party was unwilling to share, it was meant that it was not convenient for them to disclose the information. Therefore, there was no need to delve into it. Of course, she did not forget to remind Gilding, monsters on this planet will be active at night. There will be some very powerful entities that you and I can't handle. I don't know why, but they will not come close to this volcanic area. If it wasn't for this volcano, I am afraid I would not have been able to survive until today. This virus does not like the hot environment, so it won't make the host's bodies come close to hot areas. I will leave this area tomorrow morning. Do you want to come with me? Although I don't know if there are any intact spaceships over at the shipyard, checking it out won't do any harm. If it's really unusable, we'll figure out another way out later. This planet is very dangerous. The longer you stay, the greater the chances of dying. Gilding felt that abandoning the other party was akin to murder. Are you a scientist? Lilioth did not immediately answer Gilding's question. Thus, she asked this instead. I'm an interstellar pirate. Gilding corrected. Really? Lilioth seemed more interested after hearing this. She blinked twice and asked, so, how much is your bounty? Cough, cough. Gilding was reluctant to talk about this topic. I just left my home star less than a week ago. Then, there isn't a bounty on your head yet? Lilioth seemed disappointed as she whispered to herself, can a person without a bounty even be considered an interstellar pirate? Gilding was speechless after hearing this. Moments later, Lilioth asked again, what about your partner? Did you guys lose each other? I haven't recruited any yet. Gilding took a bigger blow when he heard this question. Lilioth was a little puzzled and murmured by the side, shouldn't an interstellar pirate recruit someone before heading out? Gilding sat silently beside her. Hearing these two questions from Lilioth, he also began to doubt whether or not he was a real interstellar pirate. With no bounty, and no partner, it sounded like he was more of an interstellar wanderer. Gilding, can I join your team? After a brief pause, Lilioth became determined. Aren't you too young? Gilding was a bit confused. He knew that a marksman would be indispensable in a team. However, because of this, the position was not one that was easily offered to others. BFFT, how old are you? Liliath retorted, I'm very powerful. The teacher who taught me before said I was a genius. Well, if you can prove that you are a good marksman, I will think about it. Gilding did not think that Liliath, being 14, had good marksmanship. I'll hold you to that, come with me. Liliath quickly took Gilding down the mountainside. The two hid behind a boulder, after which she handed Gilding an infrared telescope. Then, she summoned the firearm-type combat armor. The combat armor instantly changed into a large sniper rifle. The moment she got the gun, Liliath's demeanor began to change. She was clearly becoming serious. She installed the silencer onto the muzzle of the gun after taking it out. Then, she loaded the magazine by grabbing a few bullets from the storage space. This is a custom-made light energy bullet, which is particularly good against these monsters. She lowered her voice to explain. She then lifted the big sniper rifle that stood as tall as her shoulder. Watch closely. Gilding raised the telescope and looked in the direction she was aiming. After hearing the sound of the trigger being pulled, he saw a monster shot dead in the head, followed by the second, the third, the fourth. Every monster was shot in the head. On top of this, the location of the shots were always right on the left eye. Liliath loaded another round of ammo, maintaining her precise aim. What terrifying marksmanship! Gilding could not help sighing to himself. At this moment, he also noticed that Liliath's eyes turned golden as she shot. Her eyes should have the pupil technique inherited from her genes. It seems that the ability is not low grade, whilst her accuracy should just be an additional effect of the pupil technique. Neptune also noticed this. Let her join, she is an extremely good investment. How was that? Putting down the gun, Liliath's eyes returned to normal. She smiled at Gilding with pride. Good marksmanship, but I can't accept you. Gilding shook his head. Liliath's identity was obviously not so straightforward. I will get you off this planet, but you should return to your parents as soon as possible. Liliath, who initially had a smile on her face, suddenly stiffened after hearing this. After a while, her voice lowered. My parents are dead. Chapter 42. That night, Liliath was in low spirits, so Gilding chose to remain silent, afraid of saying something wrong. The long night ended in an atmosphere of silence as the sky finally lit up. Gilding woke Liliath up and, after eating some compressed food, the two finally set off. How is your physical strength? Gilding did not really check Liliath's condition. She was young and small, so generally speaking, she shouldn't be that strong. You don't have to worry about her. She is of the second-order gene. Yesterday, the giant sniper rifle weighed at least 20 kilograms, yet she flung it about like it was a plaything. You just have to worry about yourself. With one glance, Neptune confirmed what Liliath was about to say. You don't have to worry about my physical strength. I have been professionally trained since I was a child. After a moment of recovery, Liliath's mood gradually got better. She summoned the firearms and then changed them into two silver pistols. After equipping the silencer and the bullets, she hung them on her waist. You have a limited number of bullets, so try to leave it to me, yeah? Gilding also summoned his armament. Looking at Gilding's armament, Liliath was stunned. She did not expect Gilding to have this kind of weapon. Thus, when she heard Gilding say this, she quickly nodded. Okay. The two of them leapt down from the volcano one after another and rushed straight toward the direction of the shipyard. Gilding initially only ran at 50% of his speed, which caused Liliath to pout. You should run at your full speed. This is too slow. Hearing the other person say this, Gilding had no choice but to increase his speed as Liliath kept up. Seeing Gilding Xiao looking over, she explained, I received all sorts of survivability training since I was a child due to my family background. Physical prowess was one aspect I had to constantly maintain. Seeing that Liliath was able to speak whilst running, Gilding had no choice but to believe what the little girl was saying. He finally felt relieved and focused all his attention on the road ahead. Follow me, and give me a shout if you can't keep up. Liliath knew that Gilding did not want to risk being distracted in such a dangerous place, which was why he said this. However, it was not too difficult for her to keep up with Gilding as, so far, she had only used about 70% of her speed. The two soon encountered an obstruction of infected animals as three of them appeared at the same time. Lilioth pressed her hands against the two guns strapped to her waist. If Gyuding could not do it 1 against 3, then she would need to resolve the issue herself. However, she saw that Gyuding did not slow down in the slightest as he charged straight ahead. His body flickered slightly as 2 fists and a foot came out in an instant. A second later, the heads of the 3 monsters exploded at the same time. What a frightening technique! Lilioth was seeing Gyuding's strength for the first time, after which, she saw Gyuding leave without turning back. She had initially slowed down slightly in preparation for the fight, but now had to accelerate to catch up. For 5 hours, Gyuding's speed never dropped once. Even when encountering monsters, the battle was resolved in an instant without even the slightest delay. The tense Lilioth never got the opportunity to shoot. Seeing Gyuding's speed slowing down gradually, she knew that the other party's physical strength had reached its limit and he now needed a rest. Under a big tree, Gyuding finally stopped. Lilioth immediately climbed up the tree and shouted at Gyuding, "Come up. It's safer up in the trees." She's right. The leaves of the tree will shield you from the A's of those monsters. Moreover, this tree is very tall, so it will keep you out the monster's sense of smell. There is also the most important point. Those mock feline monsters, most of them can't climb trees, Neptune explained. Gyuding actually learned these things when he was in the military academy as they were all part and parcel of survival training. However, he only remembered it after hearing Lilioth and Neptune mention it. Very quickly, Gyuding climbed up the tree and sat on a branch, leaning back against the trunk to recover his strength whilst Lilioth took up guard duty. She did not exert a lot of effort along the way and had been a little embarrassed to have just been running behind Gyuding the whole time. "We should not be discovered anytime soon since there are many monster corpses along the road. The other monsters should stop to finish them before they try to catch up to us." Gyuding already had a basic understanding of the infected. "Your physical technique is good," said Lilioth. In truth, this was a form of praise. "Thank you. Your marksmanship yesterday was also very powerful." Gyuding smiled. "How much further is the shipyard?" "Probably about 400 kilometers." Gyuding silently calculated for a bit. He had only made it through 1/3 of the 600-kilometer journey. "At this rate, we should be able to arrive there in about 22 hours. There is still 34 hours before it gets dark. Unless we encounter any surprises, we should be able to get there before dark." Lilioth had been on this planet for so many days that she already knew the length of day and night on this planet. Her calculations included Gyuding's resting time, which, up until now, had been fairly accurate. Gyuding's physical strength gradually returned as half an hour passed by. Suddenly, a beastly roar came from not far away. Lilioth's heart tightened. She glanced through the gap between the leaves and saw a behemoth more than 10 meters tall coming toward their direction. She turned her head to make a silent gesture to Gyuding and whispered, "A big one. Get close to the trunk and don't get caught by it." Gyuding nodded. He stood up, pressed his body against the tree trunk, then turned his back toward the direction of the monster. The sturdy tree trunk completely blocked the two of them from sight. However, the sound of the behemoth's footsteps was getting closer and closer. Both Gyuding and Lilioth could even feel the branches that they were standing on tremble every time the beast took a step forward. "This one is comparable to a third-order genotype. You two are unlikely to win. Make sure to avoid it," Neptune advised Gyuding. As they stood behind the tree trunk, neither of them even dared to breathe as they waited patiently for the behemoth to leave. After a few minutes, they heard the behemoth's footsteps gradually move away, and the two finally let out a sigh of relief. Yet, at this moment, a monster came striding out from near the behemoth. The beast saw them and immediately came bounding after them. The monster ran towards Gyuding and Lilioth's direction, causing the behemoth to chase after it, itself eager to grab a quick meal. Lilioth looked at the approaching monster as light flashed through her eyes. A split second later, the armament in her hand changed back to the heavy sniper rifle from the previous night. The silencer was quickly installed as well as the magazine before she aimed it at the monster and pulled the trigger. Gyuding heard the light sound of the bullet zipping by and then saw the behemoth crash to the ground. All of a sudden, the corpse landing less than 200 meters away from the big tree. Seeing the behemoth fall to the ground suddenly, the other beast was stunned for a while but immediately rushed over to pick at the monster's body and tear it apart. stuffing the pieces into his mouth 3 or 2 times. After burping, it shrugged and seemed to start sniffing at something. "Have we been discovered?" Gilding frowned, diverting his gaze. These hunting monsters were very alert, and even a simple glance may attract their attention. At his side, Lilioth's palm was also sweaty as she leaned against the tree trunk, not daring to look in the direction of the beast. Both of them hid there anxiously, hoping to avoid the disaster. Chapter 43. The giant beast was like a gorilla as it walked upright on its 2 hind legs. 6 horrifying blood-red eyes beaded across its forehead. There was thick fur all over its body, and its back and abdomen were covered with a layer of black scales. Just by looking at it, you could tell that it had terrifyingly strong defense. The giant beast had an acute sense of smell, and it had quickly followed the scent toward the big tree where the 2 people were hiding. Gilding tightened his fists while Lilioth closed her eyes and tried to control the rhythm of her breathing to slow down her heart rate. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The giant beast's footsteps were getting closer. It stopped near the big tree where they were hiding and looked around. It then let out a loud roar, seemingly unable to find their hiding spot. Just as the 2 quietly let out a sigh of relief, the giant beast suddenly went mad and started attacking the surrounding trees. Even though it did not know where exactly they were hiding, it could tell from their scent that the ones that had just killed its food were still in the jungle, so it wanted to use the dumbest technique to force them out of hiding, which was to destroy all the surrounding trees. This is bad. In a few seconds, the surrounding trees collapsed. The giant beast's fists fell upon the largest tree. With one blow, the entire trunk shook as the 2 were almost thrown off. Upon seeing a tree that, despite its attack, remained standing perfectly fine, the giant beast started raging and began attacking the tree fervently. "Run!" Gilding said quietly. He grabbed Lilioth's wrist, jumped off the tree, and ran toward the depths of the jungle. When the giant beast saw them, it stopped attacking the tree and turned to chase after them. It ran with great strides, such that even though Gilding was running with all his might, the creature gradually drew closer. At that moment, Lilioth broke away from Gilding's grip. Under her direction, the firearm combat armor turned into a big, shiny black barrel. She quickly retrieved a fist-size cartridge from the storage space and shoved it into the chamber. Then, she turned around abruptly, aimed the barrel at the giant beast, and pulled the trigger. Boom! A loud explosion shook the entire jungle. The powerful projectile hit the eyes in the beast's forehead, while her petite frame remained firmly planted to the ground, her icy gaze calm. After the hit, she did not retreat. Instead, she retrieved a second bullet and shoved it into the chamber. She held the black 2-meter-long barrel firmly against her shoulder and fixed her gaze on the giant beast's silhouette, which was the only thing visible behind the cloud of dust. "I told you, she's an excellent gunner." "You got lucky this time," Neptune said when he saw what had happened. Gilding smiled but did not respond to Neptune's comment. He also stopped in his tracks and adjusted his body's condition with all his might. A rank 3 gene body would not be destroyed so easily. Even if Lilioth used a nuclear-powered sniper rifle, it would only cause flesh wounds to a rank 3 gene body. It would be difficult to deal a fatal blow, so he still had to handle the upcoming battle, whilst Lilioth could only assist. There were 2 mainstream factions of gunners. One was the violent crushing faction, and the other was the team support faction. The violent crushing faction was comprised of those that used sophisticated firearms, with dense artillery fire and bullets that restrained the opponent's ability to fight back whilst completely crushing them. Most of the users in this faction were wealthy, as the firearms were not cheap and consumed all types of bullets. Thus, their list of expenses was naturally very long. The team support faction, on the other hand, started as a poor faction and was normally used by people who could not afford good firearms or limitless bullets. Due to their lack of resources, they had to make the best of every single one of their bullets and use them only on the most important parts. Therefore, their task in a team was not to kill but to restrict and provide support. They used their bullets to stop the opponent's movements so that the opponent would not be able to use their abilities to the fullest, and to assist the other members in taking down the opponent. Of course, the demand placed on these gunners was huge. They were required to have amazing prediction and calculation skills to be able to calculate the trajectory and time of the opponent's attack whilst predicting the opponent's movements. Gilding knew that Lilioth was an excellent gunner, but until now, She had only shown tactics used by the violent Grushing faction. Whether she could use the team support faction's tactics to restrain the opponent would be the key to victory in this battle. Under the shroud of dust, the giant figure staggered to its feet and roared furiously. The ear-piercing shriek made Gylding frown whilst also causing the surrounding monsters to flee wildly. With a sudden burst of strength, the giant beast charged through the shroud of dust and rushed toward the two. It seemed that 3 of the eyes on its forehead were already destroyed. Lilioth's expression was calm. With a slight jump, another shot was fired. Her body moved backward from the recoil from the blast, and she retreated quickly. She knew she was the giant beast's target. Boom! The projectile was blocked by the giant beast's palm, and the beast sneered at Lilioth. After a quick moment, it immediately leapt at Lilioth again. On the other hand, Gylding had been completely ignored by the beast. This giant beast seems to retain a certain degree of intelligence, Neptune said after evaluating the beast's reaction. At that moment, Gylding also adjusted his body to a state that used Tier 2 ultimate arts. It took a toll on a Rank 1 gene body to use Tier 2 ultimate arts. However, Gylding had no other choice. If he wanted to kill off his opponent, he needed to pay a hefty price. From what he could see of the giant beast's current condition, he was afraid that even Tier 2 ultimate arts would not be able to cause damage to it. Gylding took a silent step and appeared quietly on the top of the giant beast's head. With tremendous strength, he brought a phantom kick down on the eyes of the beast. However, he was quickly noticed by the beast. It was enraged by Gylding's attack, and it waved its arms, trying desperately to grab Gylding. Gylding pulled back and evaded the beast's attack with another silent step. He finally caught the giant beast's attention. At the same time, Lilioth seemed to have realized something. The firearm combat armor in her grasp transformed again, and it turned into a long and thick sniper rifle, longer and thicker than the first one Gylding had seen. She quickly reloaded, then braced the buttstock against her shoulder, and aimed at the giant beast's eyes once again. However, she did not fire immediately. As she watched the giant beast pursue Gylding, she finally spotted an opening and pulled the trigger. The giant beast wailed when it was hit, as it had lost yet another eye. This made it extremely furious, and it started attacking Gylding even more wildly. Even though Gylding was using silent step, he could only try his best to dodge the beast in its berserker state. In just 2 or 3 minutes, Gylding had already suffered several blows. The Tier 2 ultimate arts righteous body support was becoming unstable as every blow he took felt as if his whole body had been struck by lightning. The Tier 2 ultimate arts cannot withstand this any longer. I need to use Tier 3. Even though Gylding knew that the use of the Tier 3 ultimate arts would have serious consequences on his body, it was still better than if he were to be killed off by this monster. At this very moment, Lilioth once again found an opening and attacked another one of the beast's eyes. Now, the 6-eyed giant beast only had one eye left. Chapter 44. The monster who only had one eye left went completely berserk, and it slammed both its fists down on Gylding, one after the other. He was bombarded by the beast's fists which rained upon him like a storm, causing Gylding to flee hastily. Even though he had activated the Tier 3 ultimate arts, the silent step technique could only barely keep up with the giant beast's attack speed. At other times, he could only use the steel fist to unload the strength, and the righteous body to resist. However, in less than 2 minutes, Gylding had already felt both his arms becoming extremely numb. Several of his ribs were broken, and there were pangs of pain coming from his chest. It was apparent that his internal organs were injured to a certain degree. If things continue like this, I'll be killed. Gylding got an idea and prepared to activate the 4th tier of ultimate arts. If you don't activate the 4th tier, you might still survive. If you activate it, you will be dead for sure. Neptune's tone sounded stern. You currently only have a rank 1 gene body. Even if you activate Tier 4 ultimate arts, your combat strength will only double. You still won't be able to break through its defense. But if you activate the Tier 4 ultimate arts, once that energy passes through you, all of your body's cells will start to quickly age and die. Unless a god descends from the skies, no one will be able to save you. Once I fall, it will rush toward Lilioth. It was the first time that Gylding had faced such a difficult situation. Just as Neptune had said, he had no chance of winning. All he could do now was resist. If you activate the 4th tier, you'll only speed up your collapse. Neptune said with even more conviction. Let her escape now. Lili, hurry up and leave. I can't hold on any longer. Run as far as you can. Gyuding shouted. Lilioth hesitated for a moment. Then, it was as if she had made up her mind about something as she tightened her fist and shouted back at Gyuding, lead it over here toward me. I have a plan to get rid of him. Don't be daft. His defense is too strong. Escape quickly. I'll be right behind you. Gyuding thought Lilioth wanted the giant beast to notice her so that he would have a chance to escape. Lead it over here. If it looks me in the eye, then I'll have a shot at killing it. Lilioth shouted at him again. Lead the monster over. This lady has pupillary abilities. Just do as she says and you two might still have a chance of survival. Neptune had always known that Lilioth had bloodline eyes, which was a genetic hereditary ability. Most abilities of the eye were extremely powerful, but Neptune was not sure what exact abilities this little lady's eyes had inherited. However, if she was speaking like this now, it should mean that she had a certain degree of self-confidence. When he heard this, Gyuding was still slightly hesitant. If Lilioth could not kill the monster with her ability, then she would be facing the threat of imminent death. The interstellar pirates have an unwritten rule. Trust your teammates. If you can't even do that, then you're not suitable to be an interstellar pirate. If you have to handle everything on your own, then you're a lone traveler. No matter how great a lone traveler is, they will never be as excellent as an interstellar pirate. Neptune knew that if Gyuding continued to hold out, it would not end well. Thus, he had to advise Gyuding to accept Lilioth's suggestion. I understand. Upon hearing this, Gyuding changed the direction of his movements and fled toward Lilioth's position. When Lilioth saw that Gyuding had taken up her suggestion, she stood her ground and stayed still. She slowly closed her eyes, listening to the sound of the giant beast approaching. She was completely calm. A moment passed, then she suddenly opened her eyes. Her pupils had turned a shade of gold, and she locked eyes with the giant beast's one remaining eye. When the giant beast saw Lilioth's eyes, it suddenly stopped in its tracks. It was as if someone had cast a body suspension ability on the giant beast that had previously been pursuing Gyuding so aggressively. Gyuding was stunned to see what was happening. After a moment, the giant beast started to wail in agony. It knelt on the ground and began smashing its skull against the ground desperately. In less than 10 seconds, his big skull had deformed, but it did not stop and continued pounding its head against the ground in a frenzy. After a little less than a minute, the giant beast's movements finally slowed down. Only half its skull remained, and its body finally collapsed onto the ground, barely breathing. Only then did Lilioth's eyes return to normal. Her body wobbled as she slumped onto the ground. She said to Gyuding weakly, "It won't be alive for much longer, let's get out of here quickly." "Gyuding, there's an energy crystal in the big fella's brain. You should retrieve it quickly. The item might help promote you to a rank 2 gene body." Gyuding, who was about to carry Lilioth onto his back, suddenly heard Neptune say this. He was stunned for a moment, then he quickly walked toward the beast. With the cover of the combat armor, he easily reached his hand into what was left of the brain in the giant beast's head. After a moment, he felt a small hard object and yanked it out. It was a small white crystal bead about the size of his thumb, and it was round and smooth like a pearl. He held the crystal bead and handed it to Lilioth. "Here's your prize." Lilioth had seen everything that Gyuding did. Looking at the mucus that remained on Gyuding's hand, she moved backward slightly, afraid that Gyuding would pass that to her too. "No thanks, that's too gross." "You keep it." "Wouldn't it be fine once we find a place to wash it later?" It was not the first time that Gyuding had been perplexed by a woman's thought process. Even when it came to shredded women that resembled men, there were many times when he just could not tell what they were thinking. For example, when these muscle women were mistaken for men, they would disregard their surroundings, go into a rampage and beat up the other party. This had happened almost every year at the Rose Tavern. Every time it happened, tons of people would come to watch the show, but no one would ever try to interfere. In Gyuding's opinion, this kind of behavior was uncalled for. All they had to do was correct the other person, and the other person would never misgender them again. There was no need for such violence. Nevertheless, every time something like this happened, the tavern would become exceptionally lively. Gyuding had always been someone who enjoyed a lively atmosphere, so he was also very happy whenever such a thing happened. "No, just keep the energy crystal for yourself. I have never used such a thing." Lilith was perfectly aware of what the crystal was, but she had never used such a thing throughout her entire life. "Alright, but I owe you. I'll pay you back next time." Yuding saw that even though she knew that it was an energy crystal, she still refused to accept it. Therefore, he just put it in his storage bag. "There's no need for that, since you're the leader. Just keep all the loot with you. If there's ever something another member needs in the future, they can just get it from you." It seemed that Lilith had decided to follow Yuding's path and become an interstellar pirate. The corner of her lips curled upward. "Don't leave it with me. I only know how to spend money, not save it." "Alright then, we'll do that for now. It seems like we need to find a companion who's good at financial management. Too bad that Gary doesn't want to be an interstellar pirate." Yuding had always thought it was a waste of Reed's talents for him to not become an interstellar pirate. "Who's Reed?" Lilith, who was being carried on Yuding's back, found something to chat about. "Ah, Reed. He was my desk mate when I was in the Sarul Military Academy. He's incredible, was great at reasoning, and was even a high-level lawyer." Chapter 45. With Lilith on his back, the two of them left the scene of the battle, and once again found a big tree to hide atop of. After using her pupillary ability, Lilith became very weak. Using a move like that, under normal circumstances, was bound to have some short-term consequences. Thankfully, would recover after spending some time resting. Yuding did not ask what that pupillary ability did, or why did the giant beast had reacted so oddly. Even though he was curious, he knew that this sort of life-saving move was extremely personal and private. Looking at Yuding's wounds, Lilith retrieved a bottle of medicine from her storage space and passed it to Yuding. "You need to treat injuries to your bones as soon as you can, or it'll cause a lot of trouble in the future." Yuding took the bottle and looked at it. The medicine was blue. It was a bottle of good quality grade E cell restorer. This bottle must have cost at least 200,000 star credits. "You really don't know how to manage your finances." Yuding grinned. "A woman just has to know how to spend her money." Lilith pouted. Yuding thought to himself, "My dad was right, women really are incomprehensible creatures." Other than some bruises on his body, Yuding also suffered several fractures, and there was also some damage to his internal organs. If he waited too long, it would cause some serious problems. Therefore, he injected the bottle of cell restorer straight into his veins. After a short moment, he felt his cells becoming active, and he quickly entered the restoration phase. After approximately 10 minutes, all his external wounds healed. His bones entered the initial healing stage, and his internal injuries were also relieved to a certain extent. "Take one bottle daily. You'll need to keep injecting this for at least 3 days in a row," Lilith said and handed him 2 more bottles of medicine. "There's no need for that. Once we find a suitable and safe location, I can make the cell restorer on my own." Even though Yuding said this, he actually did not have sufficient medicinal materials to do so. He just felt a little embarrassed about taking Lilith's things. He accepted the first bottle because he needed to repair his body urgently, otherwise, he might suffer chronic damage. However, he did not need the second or third bottle since his body's restorative abilities were better than average. He just needed to be more careful, then he should be healed after a few more days. "You're a grade E pharmacologist?" Lilith did not expect Yuding to have such an identity. "My current certification is grade F," Yuding corrected her, "but I should be able to create grade E medicine as well." "Pharmacologists do earn a lot of money, huh? You're so young, yet you can afford a piece of combat armor." Lilith pretended to act like an old lady and grabbed her chin, staring Yuding up and down. "This combat armor was a gift from someone. One combat armor costs hundreds of millions of star credits, so there's no way I could afford it," Yuding explained with a bitter smile. "The person who gave you a combat armor, surely it must be a woman?" Lilith asked. "Yes." Yuding did not deny this. "I knew it." Lilith pouted. "I'm almost healed, what about you?" The two of them had rested for almost 2 hours. Under the influence of the cell restorer, Yuding's body soon completed the initial stage of healing. "What I consumed was my spirit, so my body is fatigued, and I can't fight. I'll need at least 5 hours of sleep before my body's basic functions will be restored. If I want to restore all my combat strength, I'll need at least 20 hours of sleep," Lilith explained. This meant that in the upcoming part of their journey, they could only rely on Yuding. The medicine for restoring spirit is extremely expensive, and there is very little demand for it. Usually, when it appears at an auction, it will be auctioned off at a high price. The price for spirit restoration medicine is that high? It was the first time that Gilding had heard of such a thing. Yeah, I've seen a grade D spirit restorer being auctioned off for 1.6 billion star credits. Liliath remembered the auction clearly. I didn't participate in that action. Firstly, because it was overpriced, and secondly, because that grade D medicine is usually used by powerhouses with rank 6 or rank 7 gene bodies. Mine is just a rank 2 gene body, so it would be too much of a waste. A regular grade D gene medicine with passable quality would cost somewhere between 1 million and 3 million star credits. One with good quality would cost somewhere between 5 million and 8 million star credits. Even with perfect quality, the price should be somewhere between 60 million and 80 million. It would not exceed 100 million star credits. So, going off that basis, spirit medicine has some serious premium. Gilding was really starting to see the profit in becoming a pharmacologist. The spirit medicine that was auctioned off that time was high quality, Liliath added. It was expected to have such a high premium. Among those in the Hermian Alliance, there are less than 10 people who have the spirit medicine's formula. When it comes to medicinal formulas that are just a little unique or special, pharmaceutical factories normally have to buy them from the Hermian Alliance at a very high price. Never mind such a rare formula. It's impossible that the Hermian Alliance would sell it off. The so-called pharmaceutical factories referred to companies that bought medicinal formulas from the Hermian Alliance and used machines to mass-produce and sell the medicines. There were quite a number of such enterprises, with there being more than 30,000 in Dragons or Cosmic Nation alone. Because the refining of medicine was such an exact science, even the same type of medicine might have different refining processes based off of the pharmacologists conducting it. Therefore, the refining process that the Hermian Alliance provided to the pharmaceutical factories were normally simplified to a certain extent such that they can be handled by machines. This lowered the operating cost of the pharmaceutical factory, but it also caused the drawback in the form of the lower quality of the medicines. Usually, the medicine that was produced through a flow process was just of passable quality. Good quality medicine would require a separate production line. The formulas that the Hermian Alliance provided to the pharmaceutical factories were all formulas of common medicine, those that were in high demand but were not expensive. Nevertheless, since the pharmaceutical factories could still profit, they would not complain too much. As for the special formulas, they were only circulated within the Hermian Alliance or were privately owned by pharmacologists. Pharmaceutical factories simply could not get their hands on them. Even so, the pharmaceutical factories would also not risk offending the Hermian Alliance by trying to steal the formulas. If they did that, they would be banned by the Hermian Alliance and ostracized by the other pharmaceutical factories. I have a few hundred spirit medicine formulas in my database. Neptune's voice sounded out in Gilding's ear. I found out that the civilization of your era is missing too many things. There is so much to inherit from the ancient civilizations, and the people of your era have only scratched the surface, yet they treat it like they've found buried treasure. Alright, let's stop talking about this. Let's go. We should hurry over there before the sky turns dark. I hope we won't meet any more monsters like that along the way. As he spoke, Gilding lifted Liliath onto his back again and leapt down from the tree. Then, he ran toward the shipbuilding factory. Chapter 46. The two of them had a relatively smooth journey. Although they were attacked by some monsters, they were only comparable to rank 1 gene bodies, which was easy for Gilding to fight off. Although Gilding's injuries were not completely healed, he still carried Liliath and rushed to the space dock before dark. The moment Gilding saw the space dock, he was completely shocked. The space dock was an endless abyss with hundreds of spacecraft of various styles loaded onto the enormous staging area. However, most of them were damaged and unrecognizable from their original models. The ones that were slightly better off definitely had seen better days with obvious signs of strong impacts all over the spacecrafts. In the staging area, there were several monsters bigger than the ones they had encountered before, roaming around the place and hitting the spaceships from time to time. Some of them looked like they were playing and some looked like they were taking out their anger on a spacecraft. However, the strangest thing of all was that there were no fights between any of them. Gilding lowered his body and carried Liliath toward the back of a spaceship to hide. The two of them were on the edge of the staging area, far away from the giant beasts. "It's still not safe enough here," Liliath said with a low voice, obviously worried. "I know, we have to find a place that'll allow us to spend the night safely." Gilding nodded and said in a hushed voice. Neptune's voice quickly interjected, "Although my detection range is only 100 meters, I can estimate the movement trajectory of those monsters through your visual inspections. There are a total of 5 monsters in this staging area, and all of them are completely blocking off the gate of the space dock. Once one of them is provoked, the other 4 will surely be attracted. They seem to not be fighting with each other, nor are they chasing the other monsters. The only explanation is that there's a monster much stronger than them that's preventing them from fighting each other, which has possibly ordered them to guard the place. This shows that the one hidden behind the scenes has somehow evolved enough intelligence to work this out. The video surveillance in the space dock is all damaged, but the one behind all this wasn't smart enough to turn off the fire controls. So, I can still see its movement through the fire control room." Suddenly, Neptune's tone became serious. "I can only make a rough judgment on the strength of this guy through my estimation, and I'm guessing that this guy's at least comparable to a rank 6 gene body. If he finds you and the girl, you guys have basically 0 chance of survival." "Why did the monster that's occupying the space dock send so many monsters to guard the place? Do you think it's trying to leave this planet?" Gilding came up with an idea that scared himself as he entered the question into his wristwatch. "From the data I've received so far, that seems to be the case. It's currently repairing a huge spaceship that may be able to take these big guys along with it," Neptune said and replied with a picture. When Gilding saw the picture, he was stunned. The picture was of a spaceship that no longer looked like it was an ordinary civilian spaceship, but an assault space cruiser. Assault-type spaceships were graded with Raptor names. In ascending order, its grades were fledglings, purple martins, black crows, gray-faced buzzards, white gyrfalcons, silver hawks, golden eagles, giant rocks, to the highest of the 9 grades. The Phoenix, Gilding's previous purchase, the Kitty Hawk model, was one of the fledgling grade spaceships. Although it was considered an assault-type spaceship, it was one of the lower-tiered attack power types. On the other hand, the huge spacecraft in the picture shown to him was one of the most powerful types of gray-faced buzzard-grade space cruisers. A spacecraft of that caliber was extremely destructive and could easily destroy a city with a population of tens of millions. Gilding, who had studied battleship command in the military academy, could tell the quality of that specific spacecraft at a glance. After he stared at the picture for a while, he noticed something strange. "How come there's an extra artillery fixed onto it? Did the guy retrofit the ship itself?" "Yes, it's a type of antimatter artillery cannon." This guy was probably a highly intelligent weapon engineer before he got infected with the virus. The extra artillery was added by it, and it even made sure the nuclear reactor for the antimatter was installed. All the information about the guy that was hidden on the internet has been dug out and scanned through by Neptune. So much so that Neptune understood the entire process of repairing that spaceship. In this case, the attack power of this spaceship definitely exceeds the level of a white Gyrfalcon grade spaceship. Antimatter artillery can easily wipe out a country with a surface area of 1,000,000 square kilometers. It seems that he's not merely a mad scientist, he's also a mad warlord. Gilding frowned. "He must never be allowed to leave this place in that spaceship. I'll either have to destroy or steal it from him before he does so." "Are you crazy?" Neptune felt that Gilding was still not understanding the situation at hand. "You'll be dead the moment he catches you. And that girl? She'll be buried in the grave along with you." "Of course I'm not attacking him now." Gilding seemed to have made up his mind. "Can you check if there are any nearby spacecraft that still have a working internal force field shield? One that's able to isolate changes in energy fluctuations." "Are you really thinking about leveling up in such a dangerous place?" When Neptune heard Gilding's question, he instantly knew what he was up to. "Is there a single safe place on this entire planet?" Gilding asked rhetorically. Neptune wanted to prove him wrong by suggesting that the volcano they were previously at was a safer place, but he knew they had better things to do than argue. Gilding had already come all the way to this place, so convincing him to secretly leave it again was not going to be an easy task. All they had to do was find a spaceship with a power system that had not suffered too much damage and also had enough power to switch the energy shield back on. They just had to sneak in, turn on the energy shield, and turn on the power equipment. Even if they were attacked by the monsters, a spaceship with enough energy shield and power that could take off would be sufficient. However, Neptune kept quiet because he knew Gilding had already made up his mind. After a quick scan of all the spaceships in the staging area, Neptune was shocked to find that the power systems of all the spaceships were completely destroyed. None of them had enough power to take off, which meant that they had to go along with Gilding's idea. Gilding did not want to run off helplessly, or, in other words, he wanted to fight the guy and seize the gray-faced buzzard-grade space cruiser for himself. At your 11 o'clock. The black spacecraft 120 meters away still has a working shielding system. It has enough energy to sustain the force field for around 2 hours, Neptune informed Gilding of the results of his scan. Follow my instructions. Firstly, move toward your left and go below the spaceship. Gilding carried Lilith on his shoulders once more, then bent over and moved toward his left. Gilding stopped in his tracks after walking 120 meters. It took him more than 10 minutes to get to the spot. After he climbed onto the spacecraft secretly, Gilding ran toward the cabin section with Lilith on his back. Neptune got a hold of the entire spaceship's controls. When he opened the cabin doors, a slight click sounded. At the same time, a giant beast looked in their direction. With Lilith still on his back, Gilding immediately rushed in and shut the door. Although the giant beast heard the sound, it could only guess the general direction of the sound but not the specific location. Slowly, it wandered toward the source of the sound. Chapter 47. Turn on the shielding system. Gilding gave instructions to Neptune as he stared intently at the giant beasts approaching them. The spaceship's internal force field shield turned on immediately. Instantly, every single bit of air in the cabin was isolated from the outside. In the beginning, this sort shield function was used to smuggle living things. When the shield was turned on, the security scanner in the starport would see an empty cargo hold and they could easily pass through. However, when the defense shield system slowly became commercialized, they were normally used to transport trade secret goods to avoid competitors knowing about them. Therefore, most commercial ships had a defense shield system. Of course, the federal government subsequently made new regulations with regards to the new function. When spaceships passed the security in the starport, the shielding function must be turned off. Otherwise, any cargo found would be immediately detained. Gilding and Lilith's breathing were completely isolated from the outside world. However, they could see everything that was happening around them. The cabin section of the spaceship was roughly 10 meters above the ground, so they had a good view of the area. Luxury cargo spacecraft were generally designed this way, with the cargo compartment below the passenger cabin. As the giant beasts gradually approached, they looked left and right while their huge nostrils sniffed hard. After shaking and hitting the spacecraft for more than 10 minutes, the giant beasts decided that there was nothing of interest and returned to their previous locations. Obviously, they were not allowed to leave their initial position for too long. Gilding and Lilith finally let themselves breathe easy. Although they were able to beat the beast earlier, it would have been a hard task to beat multiple giant beasts. The beast that Lilith killed just now less than half the size of the giant beasts here. They were roughly 20 meters tall and had scale-like armor all over their bodies. Moreover, if they made even a bit more sound, the other 4 giant beasts would have noticed and the 2 of them surely would have been dead men walking. At that moment, the sky outside the window was finally dark. The defense shield system of the spaceship was turned on. Those guys that were so close by couldn't even tell we were inside. This means it should be safe to hide here. Gilding sat on the bed to the left. The spaceship was not a luxury passenger spacecraft per se but more of a cargo spacecraft. The cabins were for the cruiser in use, and there were 2 beds in each cabin. Moreover, the 2 beds in this spacecraft were more upscaled, as most ships of this type had bunk beds that housed 4 people in each cabin. It was fortunate that this cabin was so spacious. I'll go straight to bed after I wash up. My spirit will be fully restored by tomorrow morning. If there are no emergencies, try not to wake me up, Lilith said and went to the lavatory. In that single cabin, they had everything. Besides the lavatory, it even had a kitchen. Gilding laid on the bed. The big plush mattress released all his pent-up lethargy all at once. He took off his shoes with his eyes closed and rolled over the blanket to wrap himself. Immediately, Gilding fell into a deep sleep. A mere 10 hours on that planet had exhausted Gilding greatly. He was constantly either running or fighting. When he was able to catch a quick nap near the volcano, He did it on hard rocks that caused him to have a bad sleep. The fact that he was finally allowed to relax caused him to fall asleep quickly. About half an hour later, Lilioth finally came out of the bathroom in a pajama dress. When she was that Gylding was fast asleep, she lightened her footsteps and sneakily crept up to her own bed. She was about to go to sleep but noticed Gylding's left hand exposed outside the blanket. Suddenly, she thought of something and took a tube of medicine from the inventory. Neptune watched her every move, but after he realized it was a tube of medicine in her hand, he relaxed. The tube of medicine was the cell restorer she previously wanted to give Gylding. Lilioth crept beside Gylding and held up his wrist. She had no problem finding a vein and proceeded to inject the tube of cell restorer into him. After putting the empty tube into the inventory, Lilioth slipped back into her bed. The night was long and calm. Both Gylding and Lilioth slept until daylight. Gylding, who was full of spirit, stretched his body. He felt much better than when he had first arrived at the planet, which surprised him a little. "I have good news for you. Firstly, your injuries are completely healed. Your skeletal cells have completely recovered, and all internal injuries have been cleared." Neptune's voice came right after he woke up. How did it happen so fast? Gylding knew his recovery ability was amazing, but it was generally impossible for fractures to heal within 3 days. "That little girl injected you with the cell restorer while you were asleep last night. With more than 30 hours of sleep, your body had maximized its reparative ability. Not only are all your injuries healed, but your cell index has also been increased to 20 points. Neptune told him the second bit of good news. "How's your body? Do you expect it to be completely healed by tomorrow?" Lilioth was full of energy after more than 30 hours of sleep. "It's completely healed," Gylding grinned. "That fast?" Lilioth was surprised. "I told you my body was special. I am able to recover fast, and with so much sleep, it's not a surprise that I got better this quickly." Gylding omitted the fact that he knew Lilioth had secretly injected him with the cell restorer. "Oh, that's good." Lilioth felt relieved. "How are you doing? I see that you're in good spirits today. Has your spirit regenerated completely?" Gylding asked. "Yeah, it's completely regenerated. I feel a little stronger now, to be honest," Lilioth said as she gazed at the giant beasts wandering around outside the window. "I think I can wipe those fellows out one by one." People with pupillary abilities generally have extremely good fighting skills. Her spirit is flowing 60% more than yesterday. This means that her spirit strength is at least 60% stronger too, Neptune explained. "How am I supposed to use the energy crystal nucleus?" Gylding desperately wanted to improve his strength. Even if his cell index increased to 20 points, he could not beat the giant beast from yesterday, let alone the 5 bigger guys that were wandering outside at the moment. "Usually, it's ground into pieces and mixed with other ingredients to be refined into medicine," Neptune explained. "However, the crystal nucleus from the carcass of a rank 3 gene beast can only be ground by a rank 4 powerhouse. Additionally, you don't have the appropriate medicinal ingredients to refine it into a usable medicine." "Are you saying that I'll have to wait until we leave this planet?" "I can't wait that long." Gylding desperately needed to get stronger. "There's another way, but it's very risky." Neptune was silent for a moment. He could understand Gylding's urge to become stronger in this situation. Thus, he only brought it up because he had considered the method thoroughly. Even though there might be some risks associated with it, the method could be successful if it was done within a controlled environment. Chapter 48. Besides the method of being grinded and refined into medicine, energy crystals could be used through the implantation method. When the energy crystal is implanted directly into bloodstream, your blood will be used as the carrier to transfer the energy. In fact, this implantation method allowed people to gain strength faster with almost no energy loss. Having said that, naturally, ordinary people would not accept the implantation of an object taken from a virus-infected body in case the object still carried the virus. In addition to this, the energy crystal required blood as a carrier, which meant that it was usually implanted in the heart to get the best result. If it could not be implanted in the heart, it should at least be implanted somewhere close to the aorta. In any case, these sorts of implantation were not risk-free. When Gylding heard about the method from Neptune, he was shocked. Obviously, he could not implant it in his heart because it would require operation from a professional physician. As for implanting it near the aorta, Gylding also could not determine how feasible it was. "What's the safest location if I were to implant it near the aorta?" Gylding was still considering where to implant it. If it's implanted in the brachial or femoral artery, won't it be too troublesome during battles? That's why it's more appropriate to implant it near the carotid artery, Neptune explained. Since the movement in this area is relatively limited and the possibilities of this site being hit are fairly small. Although your body's special, I expect it'll need at least 2 or 3 days for the energy of the crystal to be fully absorbed. If it is implanted in the arm or thigh, any hits from fights during this period will impact the position of the crystal. Eventually, it'll cause the crystal to be unstable and, in the worst scenario, will lead to an explosion. Therefore, the neck is the safest place if you think about it. If that's the case, who'll be the one operating on me? Gylding glanced at Lilith across the room and shook his head. He suspected that the little girl would not agree to the plan anyway. You can only rely on yourself, Neptune suggested accordingly. How are you planning to use that energy crystals? Lilith asked suddenly. If you don't grind it into a powder, you won't be able to make medicine out of it. In any case, neither of us are strong enough to grind the crystal into powder. I've decided to implant it. Gylding did not intend to hide his plan. Lilith was silent for a moment before she asked, "Do you need my help?" "No, I can do it myself." Gylding shook his head. "It's too dangerous for you to operate on yourself. This thing must be implanted close to the artery. Even if you're using the monitoring device, the image you see is flipped. Any mistake made will cause heavy bleeding and the whole thing will be a mess." Lilith frowned slightly. "I've taken surgical courses, so why don't you let me do it on you? Although I only took it for a year, it'll be better than having an amateur operate on himself. At least I've practiced dissection on a number of animals before." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Gylding thought this was out of character for Lilith. "You see the monsters outside? I can only fight one at a time. And my wristwatch only just connected to this spaceship, which means that the power system has been damaged on purpose. I'm guessing the same goes for the other spaceships. Therefore, we'll have to kill those 5 monsters so that the 2 of us can slip into the space dock to see if there are any spaceships that are still working. For this to happen, you'll have to level up your strength as soon as possible. Now, it's no longer a question of whether you want it or not. It'll simply be much safer for me to perform the implantation. Furthermore, I'm guessing you probably don't have much food left. So, obviously, we'll have to leave this planet as soon as possible," Lilith explained in all seriousness. "It's safer for her to operate than you trying to do so on yourself. I mean, you've seen the precision of her pupil ability," Neptune reminded. On the first day they met, Lilith showed that she had extremely precise eyesight. Only someone with her caliber of eyesight could achieve her level of accuracy. "Okay." Gylding took out the energy crystal and handed it to Lilith. "We're implanting it in your neck, right?" Lilith asked after she took the energy crystal. "Yeah." "The other parts won't be convenient to me during a fight?" Gylding nodded. Gylding took off his shirt and laid on the bed. He pointed toward the left artery on the side of his neck. "This side." Lilith took out a bottle of medicinal liquid and injected it into Gylding's skin on his neck. After injecting the anesthetic, she proceeded with the disinfection process. Her surgical equipment was simple: a scalpel, a pair of sterile gloves, and a bottle of cell restorer. After a while, Gylding could feel the effect of the anesthetic. His entire neck had lost all sensation. "Has the anesthetic begun to take effect?" Lilith estimated that it should have started to take effect by then. "Yeah," Gylding snorted. "Then I'll start." Lilith picked up the scalpel and cut into Gylding's neck. About 2 or 3 minutes later, Lilith put the cleaned energy crystal into Gylding's wound. The whole process went smoothly. Gylding could not help but be amazed at the precision of her eyesight. She did not hesitate for 1 second and the process was done in one shot. After she inserted the energy crystal into Gylding's neck, Lilith injected the cell restorer into Gylding's body. In less than 30 seconds, Gylding's wound had healed completely without any trace of scarring. After she put away the surgical equipment, Lilith smiled and asked, "How was it?" "I told you my workmanship's good." Gylding rubbed his neck. There was still some numbness from the anesthetic, but he could feel that the wound had healed completely. "Take a look at it yourself. It healed just nice," Lilith said and pulled a mirror out to reflect the location of the surgery on Gylding's neck. Gylding lifted his chin to see that it indeed did not leave any scar, nor did any swelling occur from the surgery. "Yeah, You did a good job. After the energy crystal is implanted, you'll feel a surge of energy from the crystal, and your body will be full of energy. However, don't use your energy just yet. You'll need the strength to strengthen your cells. Neptune stopped mid-sentence, as if he was interrupted by something. Suddenly, his voice sounded a little panicked. Where did these viruses come from? I checked it thoroughly multiple times. This crystal only contains pure energy. Why are there so many viruses appearing? No, this isn't the same virus as the ones in the monsters. Neptune quickly noticed the abnormality of these viruses. And it's just full of engulfing energy, so they aren't attacking your body. What happened? Gylding asked uncertainly. Is my body being invaded by a virus? I don't want to become a monster. No, I made a mistake. Neptune stared intently at the changes in Gylding's body. Those mysterious viruses were quickly engulfed by the crystal's energy as soon as they appeared. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. If Gylding were to absorb it himself, it would take at least 3 days. After he finished the energy absorption, the viruses disappeared completely without a trace. Suddenly, the gene locks in Gylding's body began to show a crack. As time passed, the crack grew bigger and bigger. Chapter 49. The inherent gene locks in Gylding's body began to show a crack. Under the supervision of Neptune, the crack quickly got bigger. In less than 2 minutes, one of the gene locks finally broke completely. A dreadful energy gushed out of Gylding's gene chains, and the sealed gene lock that was added by some mysterious entity was totally destroyed. Its destruction was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Gylding vaguely heard 2 clicks, and felt as though something inside him had been opened. Have I been promoted to rank 2 gene body? Gylding could distinctly feel the cells throughout his body splitting and regenerating madly, each one of them packed with a few times more energy than they previously contained. The only explanation for this was if gene locks were broken and the person had been promoted to rank 2 gene body. When cells were activated, the strength of each cell changed drastically. The transformation lasted for nearly 10 minutes before it gradually slowed down. You're right. Not only have you been promoted to a rank 2 gene body, but you've also awakened a terrifying ability. When Neptune rescanned Gylding's body indicators, he found that Gylding's strength had improved tremendously. He projected the statistics for him to see. Name, Gylding. Gender, male. Age, 15. Gene level, level 2. Special abilities, level 2 rage attack, evolvable. Ability description, attack power, defense power, speed. Recovery ability is tripled, and lasts for 10 minutes. Side effects, 10 hours of exhaustion state which halves combat effectiveness. Cell index, 100. Spirit, 98. Battle prowess, B+. Mental cognition, A. Gylding's cell index had increased 5-fold. From the increase in cell index, his spirit increased 5 times as well. It was rare for a first-time awakening of abilities to be a level 2 skill. So Neptune still felt that there was even more inside Gylding's body. According to the records in his database, people who were born with gene shackles could awaken a level 5 ability the first time their abilities were awakened. The lowest level a first-time awakening should unlock should only be as low as level 4. It was uncommon from their first awakening to be a level 3 ability or lower. When Lilith saw Gylding's data projection from the side, she was so surprised that she blinked twice to make sure she was not just imagining things. How is your cell index 100 points when you're just a rank 2 gene body? A rank 2 gene body has a cell index limit of 30 points. Even if you have a special body, 50 points is already unbelievable. Cell index of 100 points is usually saved for high-tier rank 3 gene bodies. Any higher than 100 points is rank 4 gene body category. And with your amount of spirit index, I myself have a 100 spirit points because I inherited a special ability from my ancestors' genes. But you're just a normal person and yours increased to 98 points. Actually, I'm happiest about the special ability I just awakened. Gylding grinned. I was thinking that if I were to be promoted to rank 2 gene body, it would be best if my combat strength improved immediately. Who would have thought that I would get what I wanted? That ability of yours is a normal one. Neptune could not help but murmur. Initially, he was really looking forward to Gylding's awakened ability, but it turned out to just be a level 2 rage attack. Lilith did not comment on Gylding's ability. The first reason was that her body's awakened ability was very special, so Gylding's would not compare to hers. The second reason was that most people's first awakened abilities were rank 3 abilities and above. Gylding's was not very amazing in that regard. I think the most practical ability is the best ability for me. Gylding replied to Neptune. A 3 times increase in combat power, in addition to twice is the increase in combat armor, together with twice the increase in the 4th level of ultimate arts. This means my combat power is comparable to at least a 1200 points cell index powerhouse. I'll be able to kill off any rank 5 gene bodies now. It's too bad this ability is only temporary. Sure, you got your stats right. A typical rank 5 gene body has a cell index between 300 points and 1000 points. But don't forget that the opponent may know different combat skills or possess high-tier equipment. Those variables can make them slightly challenging to face, Neptune reminded him. He felt that Gylding still had a long way before he was a true powerhouse. Furthermore, 100 points or cell index is the limit of level 4 of ultimate arts. Anything after that is too much of a burden on the body. Understood, Gylding grinned. Anyway, it's enough to kill the big monsters outside. Are you sure you can beat those guys? Lilith asked with a smile. It shouldn't be a problem. Gylding flashed his signature smile. Are you talking about 1 or 5 of them? Lilith narrowed her eyes and raised the corner of her mouth slightly. 1 should be no problem for me. If 5 of them show up, I guess we'll have to find out there and then, Gylding answered honestly. He was still unsure of how strong he really was. I'll take care of 1 while you take care of the other 4, Lilith said, only half jokingly. Sure, let me have a go first. When I'm at my limit, you can help me out. Gylding still wanted to test his limits. Alright, Lilith knew that Gylding would only say this if he was really confident that he would be able to pull through. Since Gylding was certain that he would be able to deal with it, she thought it would be better if she did not interfere. The thought of them being able to enter the space dock to find a working spaceship after killing those 5 giant beasts made her slightly excited. Once we're done with these 5 monsters, we'll finally be able to leave after finding a good spaceship at the space dock. It won't be that easy. When Gylding heard what Lilith said, he hesitated for a bit, but eventually decided that it would be best if he told her the truth. Inside the space dock, there's a powerful beast that's at least a rank 6 gene body. You see these 5 giant beasts? They're just the big boss's minions. If it weren't for the big boss's orders, these 5 giant beasts would have tried to kill each other by now. There's a rank 6 gene body hidden in the space dock. Lilith thought that she had misheard. Are you sure? Initially, she wanted to ask Gylding how he knew this as she had tried to connect to the network in the space dock, but quickly found that all of the security cameras were destroyed. However, when she heard how assured Gylding was, she began to believe that they had a chance at this, so she decided to remain quiet. I'm pretty sure that the guy has some level of intelligence, which means it won't be easy to deal with him, Gylding expressed his worries. However, let's get rid of these gatekeepers first, and then we'll see what we have to do next. I think it'll be better if I go with you. I'll watch from a distance and only help when you need it. Lilith was a little worried that Gylding would not be able to handle the 5 of them by himself. Alright, but I don't think I'll need it, Gylding grinned. Chapter 50. A 100-point cell index was normally the limit of a rank 3 gene body or the minimum standard of a rank 4 gene body. The 5 virus-infected beasts that wandered around in the staging area of the space dock were all comparable to the physique of a peak rank 4 gene body martial arts practitioner, with some of them having a 300-point cell index. Infected with the virus, they had lost most of their sanity. Once they started fighting, they would completely enter a state of madness, and although this state slightly improved their combat power, it only increased it to a certain point. One might even say they entered a frenzied killing state rather than a battling one. In this state, they would ignore their injuries and focus more on attacking their enemies. From this perspective, it seemed that Gylding had an advantage over them. Gylding brought Lilith out of the spaceship where they had been hiding and summoned his combat armor. Right after this, he charged straight toward the 5 giant beasts. On the other hand, Lilith hid under a nearby spaceship and watched the battle from afar as Gylding attracted the attention of the 5 giant beasts. From her position, she would be out of harm's way, far from the fight, but close enough to use her pupillary abilities to help Gylding at the drop of a hat. When the 5 giant beasts saw Gylding charging over, all of them frantically rushed over to him with excited roars, since it was the first enemy invasion they had met with after a really long time. Although Gylding looked thin and weak, they were not fussy about a meager snack. After all, it was better than nothing. When he saw the 5 giant beasts frantically closing in on him, Gylding grinned. His speed had greatly improved compared with his previous self, and he stepped forward with his silent step. He easily escaped the claws of the giant beasts as Gylding's figure leapt high. He gave a violent phantom kick at the head of a giant beast and saw it drop heavily to the ground. The dust flew up from the impact of its head against the ground. After a second, it shook its head dizzily and tried to stand up again. Right after this, Gylding used his level 3 ultimate arts moves with full force. Steel Fist, Phantom Kick, Lightning Elbow, Flaming Knee, Terminating Finger. Every attack hit their bodies violently. Those big geese were punching bags for Gylding since they only knew how to attack without having any ability to dodge. Meanwhile, Gylding quickly started to get familiarized with his new body. Gylding had gotten a lot of practice battles with a 100-point cell index in the virtual arena. Therefore, when his real-life cell index finally reached 100 points, he had no problem getting used to it. In the 5 minutes of battle, the 5 giant beasts never got a chance to hit Gylding even once. However, they let out a painful wail every single time they were hit by Gylding. Gylding had finally mastered his new body fully and could feel his veins coursing with strength. With the help of the combat armor and his level 3 ultimate arts, Gylding's attack power was comparable to a 300-point cell index martial arts practitioner. Even so, his damage to the 5 giant beasts was limited. Although each blow inflicted pain onto them, there was no way to cause substantial damage to them due to their strong defense. It seems that, in order to kill them, at least level 4 ultimate arts is required. Gylding stopped his assault as the 5 giant beasts frantically surrounded him. It seemed that their combat power was still the same as before, or perhaps the pain inflicted on them caused them to become even more frenzied. When Lilith saw that Gylding was no longer attacking but instead starting to hide, worry stirred in her as she watched from afar. She saw how the situation was progressing with her own eyes, with Gylding's full-force attacks essentially useless against the monsters. She began to prepare her pupillary power secretly in case Gylding needed a chance to escape. On the other hand, Neptune knew very well why Gylding stopped attacking. Although the 4th level of Ultimate Arts will take a toll on your body and you won't be able to sustain it for too long, it shouldn't be a major problem. When I was testing their defense power, I got the sense that the 4th level of Ultimate Arts may not even be enough to kill them. After Gylding's brief test, he gathered that the defense power of those 5 giant beasts was probably comparable to a 400-point cell index martial arts practitioner. Yes, their defense may be strong, but don't forget that you're a martial arts practitioner. A martial arts practitioner always finds his opponent's weak spot and focuses on attacking that area. A martial arts practitioner that only relies on his own strength to subdue his opponent isn't any good, Neptune said in a matter-of-fact tone. After his words, Neptune knew that Gylding would make the right decision. Attack their weak spot. Gylding's eyes lit up when he heard what Neptune said. It was not that he did not know where their weak spot was. When he previously battled in the virtual arena, Gylding encountered his fair share of tough opponents. Although most of the time he pinned them down through sheer force, he was also able to identify his opponent's weak spots and attack them as well. My opponent's weak spot. Gylding stared the several giant beasts up and down to think about this while he simultaneously dodged their strikes. Suddenly, his eyes fell on the eyes of one of the giant beasts. He remembered the effect Lilith's sniper rifle previously had on the giant beast's eyes. Of course, their eyes. When Gylding remembered the incident and took action immediately, he stepped out with his silent step once more as his figure leapt up. He appeared on one of the heads of those giant beasts, then used the 4th level of Ultimate Arts and instantly pointed 3 terminating finger moves straight at the giant beast's 3 eyes. Roar! The giant beast wailed and began to frantically attack everything around it after losing its eyesight completely. The beast did not stop and continued to attack madly even after hitting the 2 beasts next to it. The 2 giant beasts that were attacked immediately became irritated. Those brainless chumps fought back aggressively as the scene soon descended into chaos. Gylding grinned, It seems like my tactic is working. Within the next 2 minutes, Gilding used Terminating Finger on the eyes of all 4 of the other giant beasts in succession. Thus, all 5 monsters lost their vision and could no longer chase Gilding. When Lilith saw the scene from afar, she knew that Gilding was no longer in any danger. Gilding weaved himself between the 5 giant beasts and was not hit even once by the frenzied attacks as he made use of his silent step within the combat area. However, he knew that it was not the end of the battle yet. He still had to find the fatal weakness of the 5 giant beasts to slay them properly. While roaming around, he realized that the giant beasts that were in a frenzied state would occasionally defend themselves with their left arm instead of wildly attacking. It seems like after his careful observation, he came to a pleasant conclusion: they're protecting their hearts. When they still had their vision, they could see their opponent's actions and were able to defend in time. However, after losing their eyesight, they instinctively protect their vital parts in case of any sneak attacks. You finally found it. Neptune's voice replied. In any battle, the most important step is to find your opponent's weak spot. Slowly, you'll get better at it. After Gilding found the fatal weakness of the 5 giant beasts, his subsequent job became much simpler. He broke out his 4th level ultimate arts and appeared in front of the 5 giant beasts one by one. With 5 violent steel fists, he attacked them one after another on the left side of their chests. Soon, all 5 of the giant beasts dropped to the ground in succession, after which, not a single one of them tried to get up. When Lilith saw Gilding's victory, she quickly popped up beside him. Before she could speak, Neptune suddenly shouted, "Go now! The guy in the space dock is coming." Gilding made a split-second decision and grabbed Lilith's wrist. "Let's go." Lilith was temporarily stunned. She only had the slightest moment to add the giant beast carcass nearest to her inventory before she was pulled away by Gilding. The 2 of them zoomed back toward the shielded spaceship they were previously hiding in and quickly ducked inside. When they were inside, Neptune turned on the spaceship's shielding system. At that moment, Gilding saw a figure rushing out of the space dock gate via Neptune's fire control room monitor. Chapter 51. The figure appeared to be a tall and slender human man. A pair of gold-trimmed glasses sat comfortably on his nose, adding a touch of nerdiness to his overall look. He did not look like an infected person at all. "That's the guy who has been controlling those monsters?" Lilith asked in astonishment. If she had not seen him rushing out of the dockyard just now, she would have thought that he was just a random guy who happened to pass by the area. "He doesn't look like he has been infected by the virus. I think he's one of those guys who had undergone a slightly more successful evolution process." Gilding pursed his lips and said he had to admit that the guy was quite handsome, and Gilding would typically describe him as one of those polite and gentle-looking guys. The man also gave out a scholarly vibe, which Gilding guessed had something to do with his job. After being infected by the virus, to a certain extent, one could say that the man had lost his sense of self. Now, he was nothing but a mere puppet whose body had been taken over by the virus. Indeed, his current stage of evolution had restored parts of his memory as well as a certain degree of consciousness. However, that did not change the fact that he was dead. The former him had died the minute the viruses invaded his brain. The man did a quick scan of his surroundings. After making sure that there was no sign of nearby enemies, he directed his gaze toward the carcasses and glanced at the beast's wounds. After a brief moment, he finally spotted the fatal wounds on the 4 beast carcasses, the big holes in their chests. He then bent down and started scrutinizing the wounds. The corner of his lips curled into a grin as soon as he was done examining them. It took him just an instant to infer that his opponents were not very powerful. Apart from the fatal wounds to their chests, the other injuries dealt by his opponent were not that serious. This proved that his opponent's original strength was only comparable to these beasts. Without unleashing his or her true power, his opponent's strength should not be any greater than that of these beasts. A cold chill ran down Gilding's spine when he noticed the wicked grin on the man's face. Gilding knew that the man had made a rough judgment on his strength just by looking at the wounds. The fact that the man was grinning proved that he did not think highly of Gilding at all. It was also possible that the man only thought of them as a way to pass time. Gilding's guess was correct. From Cooper's point of view, Gilding was a weak and unworthy opponent. In any case, a great deal of work was needed to repair the spacecraft, so it would take some time before he could finish repairing it. Hence, Cooper would not let any interesting toys slip away during this period. Capturing the 5 giant beasts was one of the things Cooper had done when he was feeling bored. As far as he could remember, Cooper knew that he used to be an extremely boring person. Apart from working, eating, and sleeping, he rarely enjoyed any other forms of entertainment. His job as a mechanical engineer was much more mundane compared to other careers. Most of his colleagues also lived a life like him, whereby watching a movie in bed was considered a form of entertainment. After getting a second chance in life due to the virus outbreak, he realized that he now had a completely different perspective when facing problems. Thanks to this, he stopped being a coward and inched his way forward to eventually become a level 6 genome powerhouse via the evolution process. However, he hated to do dull and boring stuff even now. Nonetheless, he still had to repair the spacecraft if he were to leave this planet. He did not need somebody else to tell him that this phase of extreme boredom was only temporary, and that it could be transformed into a lifetime of freedom. This was why he decided to shut himself in the dockyard and only come out once in a while to relax and have some fun. After digging out the energy crystals from the beasts' carcasses and storing them in the inventory, Cooper raised his head and did another quick scan of his surroundings. He only dashed back into the dockyard after making sure that the coast was clear. He's finally gone. Even Neptune breathed a sigh of relief. That guy is really powerful, Gilding said after seeing his opponent's speed. Even if his strength was greatly enhanced, Gilding still doubted his ability to beat him in a match. Judging by his speed, he should have reached at least the 6th genome level. I was so worried that he'd search the area just now. Lilith heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. He doesn't seem to be in a hurry at all. For him, this is just a game. Gilding did not find it difficult to guess his opponent's intentions. The reason why he left without hesitating is probably because he knew that we would enter the dockyard sooner or later. He's waiting for us to make a move. Why should we make the first move? Lilith felt that the chances of winning were small if this was the case. I think it'll be difficult for us to finish him off, as there are only 2 of us. Is there another way to kill him without confronting him? He has already destroyed the power systems of all the spacecraft in this square. The only functioning spacecraft is the one in the dockyard. As a result, we have no other choice but to confront him if we want to leave this planet. Gilding seemed to have no intention of admitting defeat. He continued, "Besides, this guy is extremely dangerous. I think he's planning to leave the planet with other infected people. If he ever succeeds in bringing them away from this gray star sector, it'll only be a matter of time before the virus spreads to other star sectors. Therefore, we have to either kill him or destroy the spacecraft that he's repairing. Don't forget that his strength has almost reached the 6th genome level. You might be able to suppress him temporarily if you unleash your true powers, but you won't be able to last for long. Most importantly, we still don't know what kind of abilities he has, which is the most terrifying part," Neptune reminded them from the side. At this point, they had only figured out their opponent's speed. To make matters worse, their opponent had not even shown his true power yet. Lilith was slightly doubtful upon hearing Gilding's words, as she was not sure exactly how Gilding had gotten this information. However, she still chose to believe him. "We'll definitely lose if we confront him head-on. Make sure that you have a feasible plan first before you make a move." Lilith touched her inventory wristwatch and continued, "There's a giant beast carcass in my inventory. We can take out the energy crystals during the night, and I'll try to transplant them into your body. Let's see if it works this time." Darkness finally came after they waited for 40 hours. Both Gilding and Lilith hid in the cabin without stepping out. According to Neptune, a few surveillance cameras were installed in the square. Although the images recorded were not clear, it was not difficult to see where they were hiding. Hence, Neptune would make sure to activate his shielding and tampering functions so that nothing would be recorded whenever Gilding and Lilith made a move. Meanwhile, in the dockyard's monitoring room, Cooper was checking the surveillance recordings to find out exactly what had happened in the square just now. To his surprise, he saw that the 5 giant beasts had died suddenly on their own. He immediately realized that the video had been tampered. Narrowing his eyes, Cooper could not help but feel that his current prey was much more interesting than anything he had hunted before. Chapter 52. Upon nightfall, Neptune stealthily tampered with the surveillance cameras that were installed in the square, removing all recordings of Gilding and Lilith. Meanwhile, Gilding and Lilioth took out the beast's carcass and dug out the energy crystal. After they were done, Lilioth stored the carcass back in the inventory, and both of them disappeared into the cabin without a trace. After that, Lilioth skillfully implanted the energy crystal into Gilding's neck. At this moment, Neptune concentrated all his energy onto the changes occurring within Gilding's body, as he wanted to find out exactly what secrets lay within. Just as he had expected, a rare virus suddenly appeared out of nowhere. In less than 2 minutes, the virus devoured the energy crystal embedded in Gilding's neck. This led to another change in Gilding's physique. This time, the change did not allow him to break through to the rank 3 gene body, nor did it enhance his cell index. Instead, it caused a slight morphological change in one of his genetic chains. Thanks to this, Gilding obtained a new special ability. Gilding felt that his body had changed, but he could not figure out what exactly this change was. He only knew that there had not been a direct effect on his strength. Neptune, what happened to me? Why do I feel that the energy crystal embedded in my neck has suddenly vanished? Besides, I don't seem to feel any stronger than I was before. Why don't you check your body data? Neptune suggested before pulling up his data. Name, Gilding. Gender, male. Age, 15. Gene level, level 2. Special ability 1. Level 2 Rage Attack, Evolvable. Ability description: attack power, defense power, speed, recovery ability is tripled, and lasts for 10 minutes. Side effects: 10 hours of exhaustion state which halves combat effectiveness. Special ability 2, Level 2 Regeneration, Evolvable. Ability description: regenerative ability of cells is tripled, permanently. Cell index, 100. Mental strength index, 98. Battle prowess, B+. Cognition, A. Looking at the sudden addition of a new ability, Gilding was stunned. He then asked in astonishment, how is this even possible? Lilioth also stared at the data with her mouth wide open. After a brief moment, she asked in puzzlement, why do you have a new ability even though your gene level is still at level 2? Under normal circumstances, a person would only get a new special ability when they progressed to a higher gene level. This was because the advancement to a higher level was usually coupled with a change in one's genetic chain, thus leading to the awakening of a new special ability. However, Gilding obtained a new special ability even though his gene level remained the same. Lilioth simply could not understand the reasoning behind this. It was not just Lilioth, even Neptune found it difficult to comprehend. There were many records regarding special physiques in his database, but as a rule of thumb, a person could only gain a new special ability upon the advancement of his gene level. As a result, even Neptune struggled to figure out the reason why this had happened to Gilding. Although Gilding was aware that one could only obtain a new special ability upon the advancement of one's gene level, he suspected that irregularities could happen to people with unique physiques like him. Hence, he chose not to dwell upon this matter. Upon hearing Lilioth's question, he just replied casually, I'm not too sure either. Who knows, maybe it's because I have a unique physique. Although Lilioth was still doubtful after hearing his answer, she did not ask any further questions. This was because she got the hunch that even Gilding himself did not know the answer to her question. Thus, Lilioth could only reluctantly accept the explanation that Gilding's physique was unique. At the same time, she began wondering whether Gilding would gain even more abilities if she were to implant the other 4 energy crystals found in the remaining beasts. In truth, she was not the only one who had thought of this. Even Neptune was thinking of other opportunities to implant another energy crystal into Gilding's body. He was interested to see whether or not this would awaken Gilding's 3rd special ability. Level 2 Regeneration, the enhancement of my cell's regenerative ability. It seems like this ability is not that useful. Gilding was hoping to get an ability that would directly enhance his strength. But this was clearly an auxiliary ability. If this ability is used together with your Rage Attack and Ultimate Arts, I'm sure that your combat effectiveness will be enhanced greatly. Neptune had a different idea. He continued, a tripled rate of cell regeneration means an increase in the duration of your Rage Attack to 30 minutes. This also means that the damage caused to your body due to the use of level 5 Ultimate Arts will be reduced to only 1/3 of the original amount. Gilding only realized that this ability indirectly enhanced his combat effectiveness after listening to Neptune's explanation. Now that you mention it, This ability sounds pretty good for me after all. If you look at it from a non-strength enhancement perspective, I would say that this ability is even better than your rage attack ability. Perhaps only Neptune felt this way. Amongst all the special abilities, abilities with permanent attributes account for less than 1% of the total pool, making them extremely rare. Level 2 abilities with permanent attributes are, to a certain extent, on par with level 3 abilities. Besides, if this regenerative ability evolves into high-speed regeneration, an entire functional body can be regenerated if there's even just one cell left. There were similar records in Neptune's database whereby a person who possessed this ability was considered immortal. Yuding found it difficult to believe what Neptune just said, so he blurted out, "What does it take to evolve my level 2 regeneration into high-speed regeneration?" The evolution process for most abilities are the same. A relatively faster way would be to inject a gene catalyst to induce the corresponding reaction of a genetic chain, which will then lead to an improvement in the particular ability. However, the usage of a gene catalyst does not always guarantee a 100% success rate. Generally, the success rate of these catalytic reactions are only around 10%, and it depends on a person's physique as well. Some people have a success rate of less than 5%. Another method is via surgical treatment, whereby a person's genetic chain is modified by professional nanobots. However, the surgery costs are quite high, and the modification process only applies to general abilities. We do not have the corresponding genetic blueprints for certain special abilities, so, in these cases, the modification process cannot be performed. There's also the most stupid method, which is to keep using your abilities. The more you use them, the more likely they are to evolve. Neptune told him the 3 mainstream methods of ability evolution. Neptune chose not to tell him some other unusual methods, mainly because those methods were unconventional and somewhat illegal. I've come across these 3 mainstream methods of ability evolution on the internet before. Yuding nodded and clenched his fists. I wonder if I'm now able to confront that spectacled man. Chapter 53. After a series of discussions with Neptune, Yuding finally devised a battle plan. Lily, later, I'll rush into the dockyard and lure that guy out. That'll be your chance to sneak inside and locate the spacecraft. If possible, I want you to drive it away immediately. What about you? Lilith frowned upon hearing his plan. I'll be fine. I can always run away if I can't beat him in a fight, Yuding said with a grin. No, what I mean is that you simply can't stay on this planet. Lilith shook her head and said, it's too dangerous here. If you ever get infected by the virus, you'll end up like these monsters too. Wait, I haven't finished talking. Realizing that Lilith had misunderstood him, he continued, I'm not asking you to drive the spacecraft away and leave me alone here. I'm asking you to leave this planet first and wait up to 3 days on a nearby planet before coming back. I should be able to get rid of that guy by then. I'll send you a map later, and all you need to do is dock the spacecraft somewhere around the red dot that I've marked on the map. Once you're done on your side, contact me with a walkie-talkie. Oh, I see. Alright, but why do I need to wait for 3 days? Lilith felt that it was unnecessary to wait for that long. Why don't I come and pick you up after 1 day? If you can't get rid of that guy in 1 day, I doubt that you can last for 3 days. Don't you agree? That's because it takes me 3 days to get from the dockyard to that red dot on the map. The distance is far enough to make sure that the guy doesn't notice any spacecraft landing nearby. I've taken into account that he may have a special ability that gives him a long-range vision of some sort. If he were to locate the spacecraft once more, I'm sure that he'll fight us over it. In that case, it's also very likely that he'll destroy it to prevent us from escaping. It is indeed necessary to set the rendezvous location so far away in case he has long-range vision. With a good vantage point, people with a long-range vision can easily see things up to a few hundred kilometers away. Seeing that the buildings on that dockyard are pretty tall, it's true that nothing will obstruct his line of sight if he were to stand at the highest point. Lilith finally seemed to understand Yuding's intentions. Anyway, that's the plan if things go well, Yuding said. If he notices something wrong and heads back to the dockyard in the middle of our fight, I'll send you a message immediately. If that happens, go back and hide in the cabin right away. Don't bother confronting him, or you might get killed. I understand. I know what's my combat strength, and I know that I can't beat him in a fight. Lilith nodded and said, "You should be careful and try not to get yourself killed either. If I don't receive your message, I'll be dead once he comes back to the dockyard. Don't worry, I'll make sure that the message gets through even if I'm dead." Gilding had considered this possibility as well. "Are you sure that the spacecraft is still operational? All the other power systems found in this square were destroyed. What if I find that it's not working after I get inside?" Lilith raised her concerns. "There shouldn't be any major problems regarding the spacecraft. There are just some parts that still need to be repaired, and its performance is not at its best." With Neptune's help, Gilding was now an expert in this field. "From what I can tell, there are two reasons why that guy isn't in a hurry to leave. Firstly, he wants to finish repairing the spacecraft. Secondly, he's waiting for the interstellar storm to pass. Once you're in the spacecraft, turn it on and drive it to a nearby planet. Come and pick me up in 3 days," Gilding reminded. "If I didn't show up or reply to any of your messages by the time you arrive, it means I'm dead. If that happens, you'll have to flee immediately and leave this Grey Star sector for good." Lilith went silent upon hearing his words. After a brief pause, she forced a smile and said, "You're gonna be okay." Gilding was basically ready for battle after telling Lilith his plan. He decided to confront his enemy at noon the next day, when the temperature was highest. That night, Gilding slept soundly, as usual, whereas Lilith barely got any sleep at all. Early the next morning, Gilding felt energetic and refreshed. After looking at Lilith, who looked slightly lethargic, he asked, "Didn't sleep well yesterday?" "Yeah, I guess I was just too excited." Lilith nodded and said she was actually lying. The real reason why she stayed up all night was because she was very worried that Gilding's plan might not turn out well. She was concerned that Gilding might end up getting killed, and that she would lose a good friend. "Why don't you try and get some sleep now? There's still plenty of time before noon." Gilding grinned and said, "We have to be very alert when we launch our attack." Lilith's alarm went off when it was almost noon. After turning it off, Lilith sat up in bed. She still did not manage to get much sleep. Nevertheless, she looked much more refreshed after taking a short nap. "You look much more energized now," Gilding said with a wide grin. "Well then, I better get going. You can sneak into the dockyard as soon as you see that I've managed to lure him out." "Okay." Lilith nodded determinedly. After asking Neptune to turn off the surveillance cameras, Gilding slipped out of the cabin and headed toward the dockyard. Neptune reconnected the surveillance feed only after Gilding was near the entrance to the dockyard. At almost the same time, Cooper, who was sitting on a swivel chair in the dimly lit monitoring room, spotted Gilding as well. Raising an eyebrow, he said, well, it seems that he can indeed blind the surveillance cameras. I must admit, I never expected him to show up right at my doorstep." "Is he trying to lure me out?" "The fact that he chooses to show up at noon proves that he knows that high temperatures and UV radiation are my weaknesses. Anyway, let's have some fun, shall we?" Cooper got up from his chair, and in a split second, he had already disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a spinning swivel chair. A moment later, he was at the entrance to the dockyard. Cooper was briefly stunned when he saw Gilding, as he was not expecting his opponent to be a teenager. Nevertheless, he came back to his senses and said, "Young man, it seems to me that you've done something that you weren't supposed to do." "You can talk?" Gilding was startled. Well, what makes you think that infected people like us can't talk?" "I must say, you're pretty narrow-minded if that's the case," Cooper said, broadening Gilding's knowledge about infected people. "As far as I know, you seem to know quite a lot about us. Not only are you aware that we're afraid of high temperatures and UV radiation, but you also knew the weaknesses of those giant beasts." "It seems that you've done your homework as well," Gilding said with a smile. "A lot of that was just me speculating, but what you've just said confirmed that I was right after all." Cooper leaned against the gate and replied, his lips curling into a smile. "You know what, cut the crap. Let's fight." Gilding felt that there was no need to waste time and continue talking with him anymore. He could not wait to get a taste of his strength, given that he had now obtained a new ability. "What a pity. I wanted to have a good chat with you, you know," Cooper said while looking up at the sky. The sun was shining brightly, and the intense radiation was making him feel slightly uncomfortable. Chapter 54. After Gilding was leveled up to the 4th level of Ultimate Arts, His regenerative ability allowed him to use Ultimate Arts Level 4 without it taking a toll on his body. A cell index of 100 points paired with double the combat armor and twice the strength of his Ultimate Arts Level 4 ensured that Gylding's ability was comparable to that of a martial arts practitioner with a 400-point cell index. This also meant that he had combat effectiveness of a rank 5 gene body. However, his opponent, Cooper, was a proper rank 6 gene body. He had evolved so much that he was now ruling his own kind. On land, he was undoubtedly the king of the planet. However, there were much more powerful beings in the sea. If he had not awakened the memories of the host, he would have undoubtedly tried to battle the powerful beings in the sea by engulfing everything to make himself stronger. After awakening his memory, he realized that that planet was just a speck of dust in the vast universe. Even if he became the king on the planet, he was still a tiny speck on the grand scheme of things. His ambition grew, so he decided to take his army of virus-infected beasts into the cosmic sea. If he was not the ultimate king of the universe, at least he would be able to make a name for himself. This was to prove he had lived, so that everyone would know his name. Only after confronting his opponent head-on did Gylding realize how strong he was. Who knew that a rank 6 gene body would be that much stronger than himself? Whether it was in terms of strength or speed, Gylding was completely outclassed, despite the fact that his opponent had only just started. "You seem to be stronger than those who killed me." Cooper did not exert his full strength. Firstly, there was no need to. Secondly, he was curious about his opponent, who was obviously way weaker than him but had enough guts to provoke him. Therefore, either his opponent was holding back, or he was here for another reason. "The person who killed me was your partner, right?" Gylding's heart jumped for a moment. Although Cooper's guess was inaccurate, he could not let the latter know of Liliath's existence, or else his plan would be ruined. Gylding continued his attack with full focus without missing a beat. "Didn't you realize one of your bodyguards went missing? That guy's energy crystal helped me improve my strength." "Is that so? Absorbing an energy crystal within one night? That's the first time I've heard of such a thing." Cooper did not believe Gylding's comment and began to suspect that he was just acting as bait for someone else. Cooper had a special detection ability which allowed him to detect any movement made by a creature within 10 kilometers. However, when he used his detection ability, he could not detect any being nearby except for Gylding. "Did I guess incorrectly? Is he really alone?" "It can't be." "When he was killing the 5 beasts that I was connected to, I noticed it instantly. At most, it took me 5 seconds to arrive at the scene, but when I got there, he was gone and I couldn't detect his presence anywhere." "It's impossible for him to run more than 10 kilometers away within 5 seconds. There must be something else that was shielding him from my scan." Cooper thought back to the day the 5 giant beasts were killed. After they were killed, he tried to use his detection ability, but could not detect anything. "If he has a partner, they're most likely using the same shielding method to block my detection." "Get your partner out right now. You're no match for me. If both of you team up, you might have a chance to win." Cooper sneered, but he was still not sure how many people Gylding had with him. "I told you already, I killed all those guys." "I can't help it if you won't believe me." Gylding violently launched a steel fist at Cooper's arm. "This is the exact same move I used on them." However, Gylding's attack did not cause any damage to Cooper. After all, the gene level gap between the two of them was very large. Even so, Cooper could clearly feel that Gylding's martial arts was something special, since almost every attack Gylding did was high damage. Those sorts of attacks indeed coincided with the wounds on the bodies of the 4 giant beasts. "It doesn't matter how many people he is on his side. I'll just have to capture him alive and get some answers from him. Then, I'll get an idea of the situation outside this planet and see who the powerhouses are." Since Cooper was not able to get anything from him, he hatched a new plan, which was to capture his opponent alive and torture him. This was the easiest way to obtain information. Suddenly, his attacks changed. Initially, his attacks and defenses were mild, but soon, they became serious. Every punch and scratch hit Gylding's strongest points as the latter soon felt as though he was going to get beaten at any moment. When Gylding noticed the change, he suddenly retreated and turned to escape into the jungle. Cooper was determined to catch Gylding alive and caught up immediately as he was several times faster than Gylding. When Gylding saw the way the situation was developing, He used Ultimate Arts Level 5 with all his might and silence stepped away. His speed increased and he was soon inside the dense forest. Cooper did not hesitate and followed him into the jungle. Liliath, who had been watching them from a distance, saw that the two of them had entered the jungle, and so, finally slipped out of the spaceship. The way she moved was very special. In just a few steps, she reached the gate of the space dock. In the hallway, the lighting seemed to have been intentionally broken. Even though it was noon, the whole place was dark. However, the darkness did not affect Liliath's vision. It seems that not only does the virus not like ultraviolet rays, they also can't stand indoor lights. Liliath shook her head as she looked at the airtight windows boarded up with wood in the pitch-black darkness. After glancing at the map handed to her by Gyuding, she quickly determined her current location and then ran toward the location marked on the map. After making 3 or 4 turns in the space dock, she finally reached her destination and saw the ship mentioned by Gyuding. That's a big ship. Even though Liliath was quite worldly, this was the first time she had ever come so close to a grey-faced buzzard-grade spaceship. As she climbed up the stairs to the ship, Liliath's intuition told her something was wrong. The combat armor in her hands suddenly transformed and changed into 2 silver pistols. She stayed at the same spot and pointed the gun outward on both sides of there. Who's there? Come out at once. Suddenly, a black shadowy pool appeared and began morphing into something from the ground not far away from her. Right before her eyes, it formed a human figure and said, "You're a sharp one. I didn't expect you to notice me." Chapter 55. With Liliath was in danger, Neptune sounded a warning in Gyuding's ear. Liliath's in trouble. What? Gyuding almost screamed. Didn't you check that there was no one else with the monitor? It's not someone. When Neptune was about to explain, but he was interrupted by someone behind Gyuding. Do you still want to continue to run? Your partner snuck into the space dock and was caught. I don't think you need to waste any more time trying to get me further away. Cooper's voice came from behind Gyuding, less than 10 meters away. You already knew? Gyuding felt that his plan was a failure as he thought that his opponent had guessed his every move. I only guessed it. In the beginning, I wasn't sure how many people you had behind you. Cooper shook his head. But I knew one thing. The reason you came to the space dock was to find a functioning spaceship to leave this planet. Other than that, I don't think you would have many reasons to challenge me. To get that spaceship, you only have 2 options. First, is to kill me so you can take the spaceship with no frills. Of course, this method is limited to people who are stronger than me. As for the second method, it's to try and sneak into the spaceship while I'm absent and fly it off. Since I won't leave my spaceship on my own volition, this sort of plan can only work with 2 people. One person will be responsible to lead me away and the other one will fly the spaceship off. Obviously, you chose the second method. In order to avoid the second situation from transpiring, I had 2 options. One was to stay by the spaceship and ignore your provocation. That way, you geese would have to enter the space dock and fight me head-on. But you know me, I can't ignore these sorts of challenges. So, I took the second option, which was to use an ability which I'm not so keen on. Once Cooper said this, he revealed his hand. It's my special ability, called Shadow Body. Anyone who has the Shadow Body ability is able to split their body into a shadow figure. This separated body will have half the strength of Summoner. As a side effect, the strength of the original body will also be reduced by half. Neptune explained to Gyuding when he heard what his opponent said. Do you know why I didn't go full force on you at the space dock gate just now for the longest time? It's because I wanted to know what your maximum strength was. If you were really strong, I'd call my avatar back to kill you first. However, it seems that I won't need to do that. That's why I played along with your game, because it doesn't matter where I kill you. Cooper flaunted his intelligence happily. After figuring out his opponent's plan, he exposed the fact that he had guessed every move happily. Just so I understand this whole thing, you could have absorbed your shadow body at the space dock gate just now to restore yourself to peak strength, but now that you're this far away, you won't be able to absorb your shadow body back, right? Which also means that you will continue to be half of your normal strength, right? Gyuding asked Cooper after realizing something. In actuality, Gyuding wanted to get the answer from Neptune instead of Cooper. I'll kill both you and your little girlfriend soon, so I guess it's alright to tell you. You guessed correctly. My shadow body must touch my shadow in order to be absorbed back. My shadow body has been hiding behind the space dock gate just now, so I could merge with my shadow at any moment if I had to. So, I guess you're right, there's no way I can reabsorb it that we're so far away. So what? Your strength right now is no match for me anyway. Cooper beamed with pride. He's telling the truth, Neptune's voice said. I have one more question. If you're killed, will your avatar disappear? Gilding probably knew the answer to that question, but he still wanted confirmation from Cooper. Of course, unless there's some sort of cursed type ability. Under normal conditions, the ability stops working once the host controlling the power abilities dies. Don't you have any common sense? Cooper thought that Gilding's questions were quite childish, but still gave him an answer. Obviously, showing off that his IQ was higher than Gilding's was a sort of victory to him too. All the abilities from the split body will disappear after the death of the host. Neptune likewise gave a definite answer. Sorry to tell you this, but I have to say you something that may disappoint you. After he got Neptune's confirmation, Gilding suddenly stopped running and turned around to stand on the spot. As he stared coldly at Cooper, he said, "You have underestimated my strength. I like your spirit, but do you really think you can bluff me?" Cooper was momentarily stunned, but soon began to smile after hearing Gilding's words. Only using Silent Step from Ultimate Arts Level 5 did not place a heavy burden on Gilding's body since there was no physical impact. Gilding knew that he could not delay for a second longer once he thought of Liliath encountering a rank 6 gene body opponent. He knew he had to go all out and kill the guy in front of him. Otherwise, Liliath might not survive. After unlocking Ultimate Arts Level 5 with full force, Gilding's strength tripled. At the same time, his rage attack became 3 times as effective. Paired with his double effectiveness combat armor, Gilding's total combat effectiveness at that moment was comparable to an 1800-point Cell Index martial arts practitioner. However, he could only last up to 30 minutes in this state. When Gilding was in the rage attack state, both of his eyes became bloodshot. When Cooper saw this, he suddenly felt a little uneasy. Somehow, he got the feeling that Gilding was a lot stronger than before. A rank 6 gene body has a cell index of between 1,000 points and 3,000 points. Cooper was at the upper boundary with 3,000 points, but after halving his combat power, it was only equivalent to 1,500 points, which was not as high as Gilding. Gilding's knees bent slightly, then he went full throttle and threw himself forward. This happened so fast that Cooper could not see what had happened. By the time Cooper saw Gilding had already closed in on him and brought forward Ultimate Art Level 5 at maximum capacity. His body was inverted and twisted, with both his hands planted on the ground and his feet launching at his opponent's chin. The only thing Cooper felt was a violent impact on his chin that almost dislocated it. At the same time, the force threw his body upward into the air. However, Gilding was not done with him yet. He did a backflip and landed in a squat position. Then, using the full force of both his legs, he jumped and appeared beside Cooper's already unstable body. With both hands clenched together, Gilding hammered Cooper's chest, sending his body flying to the ground. Crack! Cooper knew that at least 2 of his ribs had been broken by the blow. From the pain in his chest, Cooper quickly realized Gilding's true strength. This guy actually had such power inside of him. Cooper's back hit the ground hard. Luckily, the spine is one of the hardest parts of the body, so he was not badly hurt. Meanwhile, Gilding was not done yet. Without a pause, fists after fists of steel fists were used on Cooper. Gilding did not hold back as each punch was thrown with full power. Cooper could barely block the attacks with his arms. If his arms had not borne most of the impact, his heart would have been smashed into pieces. Soon, he noticed that the bones in his arms were beginning to crack, and he became aware that he would not be able to last any longer. Although Gilding was winning the battle on his end, Liliath had fallen into an unprecedented situation on her side. Chapter 56. Instantly, Liliath's heart began to beat rapidly as she looked at Cooper's condensing figure right in front of her eyes. At that moment, the sound of a message came from her communicator. She guessed that the message came from Gilding. Gilding probably knew what had happened to her, but instead of looking down to read the message, her eyes remained locked on her opponent's body. Not once did she dare to let her guard down. "I didn't expect the people who killed my 5 men to be 2 kids," Cooper's split body was also a bit surprised by Lilioth's appearance. He did not attack immediately because he had yet to sense any danger from the original body. This was also one of the weaknesses of the shadow body. The original body could feel all changes from the split body, but not the other way around. If he knew that the original body was in danger, he would have killed Lilioth immediately. Without uttering a word, Lilioth quickly changed the combat armor in her hands into a light-energy sniper rifle. Swiftly, she placed the body on her shoulder and loaded the ammunition. Throughout the act, not once did her eyes leave Cooper's split body. The combination of a light-energy weapon and light-energy bullets was very effective on people infected with the virus. Even so, Lilioth knew that it would be unlikely that she would be able to defeat her opponent, but it would at least buy her some time. She was not sure what was happening on Gilding's side because he had not come back yet. This only meant one thing: he had encountered an opponent himself. Although she could not understand why there were two Coopers, she did not rule out the possibility that Gilding's monitor had given him incorrect information. However, this was not the time to complain about Gilding's mistakes. It was probably a tiny mistake, and there were actually two of them guarding the place. If Gilding lost, the only thing that would be waiting for her was death. If Gilding won and rushed over, the two of them might stand a chance to win if they worked together. Therefore, the only thing she could do was bide time until Gilding arrived. If she had to do everything alone, she would be dead in the water. Cooper did not stop Lilioth from changing her combat armor either. He seemed to be completely confident and said, "It seems like you're a gunner. That means that it wasn't you who killed my 5 men. Oh my, this is my first time seeing a gunner as young as you. Still, that's too bad. Firearms won't work on me." "Is that so? Let's try and see." Lilioth aimed at her opponent and pulled the trigger. Bang! The first bullet cut straight through the air. However, Lilioth's sights remained fixed on her target. She pulled the trigger 2 more times as both bullets whistled toward her target. 3 bullets were fired instantly, after which Lilioth aimed the barrel once again at her opponent. "You got me," Cooper teased. Although the shots seemed to hit him, there was no damage to him at all. "As I've said, firearms are useless against me. Aren't you a virus-infected creature?" Lilioth frowned slightly. Even if her opponent was strong, the virus in his body should respond to the ultraviolet radiation in the bullet. However, it seemed that it was completely ineffective against her opponent at that moment. "What a clever little girl. You figured it out." Cooper pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Since you're no threat to me, I'll capture you alive first. I'll wait for the original body to come back and do what he wants with you." "Original body?" Lilioth was stunned for a moment when she heard what he said. "This guy's a split body?" Suddenly, Lilioth understood what was going on. The one that had chased Gilding was the original body, while the one that remained here was his split body. Lilioth had some knowledge about split body type abilities and knew that most split bodies would be weaker than their original body. Most split bodies got their strength from the original body, which halved the strength of the original body. If this was the case, then Gilding was probably winning on his side. Only now did it make sense why Gilding's monitor had made an error. It had correctly shown that there was only one person, as the split body left behind by Cooper had probably hidden somewhere undetectable. If you know that the opponent's a split body type, you'll immediately know what their weakness is. Lilioth immediately came up with a countermeasure. The puppets from split bodies are generally afraid of fire, while shadow bodies are afraid of high-intensity light. Split body illusions can only confuse its opponent's sight and hearing, but cannot actually attack. After learning that her opponent was merely a split body, she knew that it only had half the strength of the original body. This made Lilioth more confident as she secretly praised herself for listening attentively during the class taught by her lecturer. As a result, she had mastered most of the content that was taught in class. "Let's try again." The firearm in Lilioth's hands changed once more. It changed into a high-speed submachine gun as she quickly loaded it with flame-bursting bullets. If her opponent was a puppet-type split body, those bullets would be his ultimate nightmare. "I've said it time and time again, firearm-type weapons are useless against me." Cooper's face showed disdain as he rushed toward Lilioth. Lilioth pulled the trigger of the firearm in her hand again as continuous bursts of bullets flew toward her opponent. In a flash, Cooper rushed out of the smoky air, Still unscathed, he sped forward and grasped Lilioth's throat with one hand. He lifted her up by her throat and said, "How many times do I have to tell you? When will you believe that firearms are of no use against me?" "Really?" Lilioth gasped the word softly as she was lifted in the air. "Then what about this?" As soon as she spoke, a spherical metal object fell from her hand toward Cooper's feet. Immediately, she closed her eyes. After a moment, a dazzling light came from under Cooper's feet and lit up the entire room, dispelling all the haze around them. The only thing Lilioth heard was Cooper's split body wailing sharply as her throat was released. What Lilioth used was a flash grenade. Shadow bodies could only exist in shadowy places, so when she used the flash grenade, it dispelled the darkness in the room and effectively chased Cooper's split body off. However, the effect was only temporary. The recondensation of shadow bodies would only take a few minutes, and Lilioth did not have many flash grenades left. She only had 4 left in her hand. There's no way to completely kill this guy. Shadow bodies are almost completely immune to physical attacks. Lilioth thought of this and suddenly recalled a move she had yet to try. The ability of split bodies made it so that any kind of split bodies created had residual consciousness of the original body. Once the residual consciousness within the split bodies dissipates, the split bodies would automatically disappear. Furthermore, the residual consciousness in the split body was generally very weak, being less than 1% of the strength of the original body's consciousness. Even so, each time there was a separation, it would cause some kind of pain to the original body. Since their opponent's original body was rank 6 gene body, the spirit body was at least a rank 5 gene body. Otherwise, their opponent would not have been able to advance to rank 6. A rank 5 gene body's spirit index was generally between 300 points and 1000 points. This also meant that the residual consciousness intensity in that split body should be between 30 points and 100 points. On the other hand, Lilioth's spirit index was 100 points. While her pupillary power could increase her spirit attack, she could use all her pupillary powers to increase her spirit in order to wipe out the residual conscience left in the split body. Of course, the premise of this method succeeding was based on her opponent never doing spirit practice. If her opponent's spirit was extremely strong, to the extent of exceeding 1000 points, Lilioth's attack may not be effective. Having said that, the most important point was that Lilioth had never used this sort of direct spirit attack before. She had just happened to see relevant introductions in some books in the past. However, she decided to take a chance and try it out instead of waiting there like a sitting duck. On the other end, Gylding's situation had also changed slightly. Chapter 57. Gylding's violent attack lasted nearly 10 minutes. In the beginning, Cooper could not keep up with Gylding's rhythm. He did not expect Gylding's attack to be so fierce and sturdy. Gylding's every blow was extremely difficult to defend. His hands, feet, knees, and elbows were all used at random to deal horrific attacks, making him undefeatable. However, Cooper continued to defend himself with his body. Cooper was originally a rank 6 gene body with a cell index that reached 3000 points. This was also the upper boundary limit that a rank 6 gene body could reach. Even with the use of the split body ability, his combat effectiveness in the weakened state was comparable to a martial arts practitioner with a cell index of 1500 points. However, the truth was that the only thing halved was his combat effectiveness. Although his cell index was lowered as a result of his weakened state, it did not decline much and was still at least around 2000 points. With all the add-ons, Gylding reached the strength of an 1800-point cell index, which allowed him to surpass Cooper. However, he was only slightly more powerful than Cooper. He could hurt him, but it was difficult to cause any fatal injuries. As time passed, Cooper became familiar with Gylding's fighting style, and he began to hatch an effective defense. When he saw Gylding's crimson eyes, Cooper knew that his opponent's state would not last long. As long as he could pull through this period, victory would eventually be his. Gylding seemed to be aware of this too. His rage attack could only last so long because of his regenerative ability. However, more than 10 minutes had passed, and his opponent's defense was only getting stronger and stronger. If he did not take any special measures, the person on the losing side would be him once his rage attack ability timer ran out. Level 6. Gylding was ready to take a risk. Neptune also noticed Gylding was playing with the idea. From his understanding of Gylding, He could guess a lot of things about him without Gylding having to explicitly say it. I know what you're thinking, but if you use level 6, your body will only be able to support it for up to 5 minutes. Also, even if you increase your combat effectiveness until it's comparable to a 3000-point cell index martial artist, you'll only be able to cause heavy damage to him at most. It'll still be impossible for you to kill him. After hearing what Neptune said, doubt began to grow in Gylding's heart. Even though his opponent was comparable to a 1500-point cell index combat power practitioner in his weakened state, he should still have been able to kill his opponent off easily once he reached 3000 points. However, Neptune said that he would only do heavy damage on him. Almost instantly, Neptune provided him an explanation. Humans can only be said to have a truly evolved gene body after they reach rank 6 gene body. This is because after the gene has evolved to the 6th rank, and the DNA chain in the body will evolve from a double helix into a triple helix state, forming a more stable bond. Moreover, the addition of an entire gene chain will also allow the cell to undergo an entirely new metamorphosis. To a certain extent, humans who have evolved to this level can be said to be an entirely new species. Because of this, the stability of rank 6 gene body cells is more than twice the strength of rank 5 gene body cells, and its resistance to shock is twice that of a rank 5 gene body. For example, take two people with cell indexes of 1000 points, but one of them a rank 5 gene body while the other is a rank 6 gene body. I'll quantify the attack power so that you'll understand it better. If the person of rank 5 gene body can withstand 1000 points of attack power, there's a risk of death if the attack surpasses 1000 points. For the person of rank 6 gene body, they will be able to withstand an attack power of 2000 points. The attack power of more than 1000 points will hurt them, but it won't kill them. They'll only die if the attack power exceeds 2000 points. Although your opponent's strength is much weaker, the fact that he's a rank 6 gene body hasn't changed. Even if his current cell index is reduced to less than 2000 points, only a martial arts practitioner with a 4000-point cell index attack will be able to kill him. Even if you use Ultimate Arts level 6, your attack is only of a 3000-point cell index martial arts practitioner. Therefore, it can hurt him, but not kill him. After he heard Neptune's explanation, Gylding fell silent for a moment. In the end, he still went with the decision to go all out and use Ultimate Arts level 6. The 6th level of Ultimate Arts has the effect of a 5-fold increase in combat effectiveness. By pairing this with his double effect combat armor, and 3 times increase of rage attack, Gylding's combat power increased to a whopping total of 30 times his original strength. Gylding's original 100-point cell index had thus strengthened to be the equivalent of 3000-point cell index. However, he could only maintain this state for up to 5 minutes. In reality, the side effects of using Ultimate Arts level 6 were clearly felt within his body. His body muscles began to feel sore, and he could detect faint wear and tear in his joints. He knew that the 5 minutes Neptune mentioned was not said to frighten him, but simply the reality of the situation. From the state of his body, he was unsure if he could even last 5 minutes in the first place. As he overloaded his body, Gylding received unprecedented, terrifying power. Every time he attacked, there were loud sounds that caused a violent sonic boom. Not only was his strength enhanced, Gylding's attack speed also significantly improved. Cooper, who had barely kept up with Gylding's fighting rhythm before, was disrupted once again. He was a human sandbag that could not defend himself as he was completely subdued by Gylding's violent storm of attacks. How's this possible? When he felt his body's injuries getting worse, Cooper was horrified and became speechless. How did he become even stronger? The strength and speed of these attacks are the same caliber of attacks I used to become king. Gylding's fists and feet fell on Cooper's body wildly with no signs of stopping. He knew that he did not have much time. Although his own attack power was not enough to kill his opponent, it would be a win for him so long as his opponent injured enough that he could not fight back. Do you think you can kill me like this? You're being naive. Cooper defended with all his might. Although his physical injuries were getting worse by the minute, he waited patiently. He knew that the stronger Gylding attacks were, the shorter he could sustain them. Trust me when I say, you won't last long. Boom, boom, boom. Gylding's attack poured out with no reservation as he punched with his fists, one after another. It was never-ending hellfire, almost as if he could not tire at all. Having said that, the amount of time he could stay in this state was dropping by the minute. This is the last 10 seconds. Give up already, Gyuding. Your body will collapse completely. Neptune could not bear to watch it any longer. Gyuding's body was nearing total collapse, and most of the cells in his body were severely damaged, so much so that even his regeneration ability could not save him now. Die! As Gyuding shouted, the 7th level of Ultimate Arts was unlocked, a tenfold increase. He knew that he had no other choice, and that this was the only way to kill his opponent. If he lost this battle, both Liliath and him would be as good as dead. If he won, perhaps Liliath might still stand a chance to survive. He clenched his right fist. He could already see his muscles separating and bursting apart at the seams, but he still wore the same grin on his face as he aimed his last punch straight at his opponent's heart. Steel fist. Boom. After a loud explosion, a figure flew outward. A violent sonic boom caused a haze of smoke to cover the battlefield. Chapter 58. Under a thick cloud of dust, a young boy asked in a weakened voice, "Neptune, did I win?" Gyuding lay on the ground, unable to move as almost all the cell in his body was dead. Even with his regenerative ability, he was unable to repair that level of damage. When Neptune saw Gyuding's weakened state, he knew that Gyuding was as good as dead if he did not receive treatment within half an hour. Neptune was silent for a moment, but replied in a calm voice, "Yes, you won." "What about Lili? Is she still alive?" Gyuding asked. If he killed the original body of the guy just now, the split body that Lili encountered should also disappear. This should mean that Lili should be safe as long as she was able to stay alive until then. She's still alive, but even though you've won, the guy infected with the virus is probably not dead yet. Therefore, his split body is still fighting Liliath. Neptune continued to explain, "There are no monitoring services in this forest, so I can't see what his condition is right now. However, judging by the intensity of your attack just now, he's definitely more seriously injured than you even if he's not dead yet. Although it's just a split body, can Lili cope with it?" Gyuding looked worried. "You don't need to worry about her. I've been following her battle through her wristwatch. She's handling it well. She found her opponent's weakness, and the battle between them should end soon." After Neptune said this, Gyuding relaxed. "If you really want to be an interstellar pirate, you'll have to make a lot of partners in the future. Even so, you won't be able to protect everyone because you're just one person." Neptune thought that Gyuding's character was not suitable to become an interstellar pirate. "If I don't take care of my partner, who will?" Gyuding grinned. Even a slight movement such as forming a grin hurt his entire body. When he felt the pain shoot through his body, Gyuding seemed to realize something. "Neptune, tell me, am I going to die?" Neptune was silent for a moment but dodged the question. 60% of the cells in your body are already necrotic, and the regenerative ability is no longer working on you. I've told you hundreds of times not to use the Ultimate Arts Level 7, but your idiot head just won't listen to me. You know you have to use your brain more during battles and not just brute force, right? When Gyuding heard Neptune nag him, all he did was smile. Although Neptune did not answer him directly, he already knew the answer. "Anyway, I think I can be considered an official interstellar pirate now. Although I've yet to receive a reward, my pirate crew now consists of 2 members including myself. It's a pity I haven't entered the Cosmic Sea yet." "Who said there's only one other member in your crew?" "I'm obviously a member of yours too, alright?" Neptune was silent for a moment but interrupted Gyuding. "Although I'm an artificial superintelligence program and different from you human, I'll go straight to the Federation government to sue you for racial discrimination if you ignore me. When Lili comes over later and sees my dead body, tell her not to cry because the scariest thing for me to see is a girl crying," Gyuding continued, still smiling. "And you, join Lili and leave this place. Although she sometimes has a little bit of a temper, she's a reliable partner overall." Gyuding's voice grew quieter, and toward the end of his sentence, he fell silent. "Gyuding, wake up. Don't fall asleep." Neptune knew that once Gyuding falls asleep, it might be forever. However, Gyuding's eyelids grew heavier, and gradually, it drooped down heavily as he fell into a deep slumber. Inside the space dock, a new round started on Liliath's side. Cooper's split body recondensed completely at that moment, but he did not dare to attack Lilioth because he was not sure how many flash bombs Lilioth still had with her. Every time he was dispelled, it brought extreme pain, and every time he recondensed, his strength would be weakened. Thus, he began to lower his opponent's confidence with words. "Do you really think this kind of flash grenade works on me? That thing can only dispel me temporarily. Within a minute, I can recondense, and then all your hard work will be for naught. If it's not working, why are you wasting your time saying these things to me?" Lilioth remembered the shadow body's weakness very well. Every time they were dispelled, their strength would be weakened. Since her opponent refused to attack her head-on, it was apparent that he was afraid of the flash grenades in her hands. I don't know what happened over on Gylding's side, but the original body's definitely more difficult to fight than this split body. At the same time, Lilioth was worried about Gylding's situation. At that moment, a voice popped up inside her ear. "Lilioth, this is Neptune, a friend of Gylding. He's in a very dangerous situation right now. If you can, please finish up your battle as soon as possible. I'll send you a map later. Please get to the location marked on the map as soon as possible." When she heard the little boy's voice that was filled with anxiety, Lilioth believed it without much thought. As for how the person on the line connected to her communicator, she did not think about it even though she had set it up to automatically block all messages. Soon, Lilioth came up with a countermeasure. The firearm in her hand changed shape again and became a submachine gun. She changed the clip quickly and fixed her aim on Cooper's split body. Immediately after, she began to shoot wildly. Cooper's split body tried to dodge the bullets. They did not cause him much harm. But even so, they still hurt like hell. Therefore, he tried his best to hide and avoid the bullets. However, the bullets seemed to follow him wherever he went, which drove him mad. After about 2 or 3 minutes, his patience reached its limits. Although his opponent was obviously not as strong as him and the bullets did not have much of an effect, he was still embarrassed from getting bullied. Basically, he felt like he was being pushed into a corner. Due to his great annoyance, he completely forgot about the severity of the flash grenades and assumed that Lilioth did not have a second one. After he dodged a few steps to the left and right, he turned and immediately rushed toward Lilioth's position again. This time, he moved faster and grabbed Lilioth's throat again. "I'm warning you, if you do that thing again, I'll break your neck," Cooper's split body threatened. "Is that so?" Lilioth suddenly raised her head and both her pupils instantly turned golden. The spirit in her mind furiously poured out from her golden eyes and went straight into her opponent's mind. When the force of the spirit attacked her opponent's mind, it tore his mind apart like paper. "What are you doing?" When Cooper's split body felt the attack on his consciousness, he shuddered as he immediately realized what Lilioth was trying to do. He was about to break Lilioth's neck when her eyes shot out in intense light, causing the enormous pain to flood Cooper's brain again. Then she did it again, and again, each burst coming at him like a series of never-ending waves. "Ah!" Cooper's split body tossed Lilioth aside as he rolled on the ground frenziedly while grasping his head. Thus far, Lilioth had given out 6 waves of attacks. As she became more familiar with this type of attack, her attacks became stronger, causing her golden eyes to shine brightly in the dark room. After the 8th wave of spirit attack, Cooper's rolling split body finally evaporated completely from the ground. Chapter 59. After getting rid of her opponent, Lilioth immediately opened the map Neptune Center and then ran all the way toward the location marked with the red dot on the map. At the time, she did not stop to think if this was a trap set up by the enemy, or to consider what was the point of her going if Gylding had already lost. She only knew that no matter what the situation was, Gylding needed her help now. After a few minutes, she finally arrived at the scene. After a quick scan of her pupillary abilities, she did not find any enemies. However, Gylding laid quietly on the ground, making her a little uneasy. She walked to Gylding's side and pressed 2 fingers against the carotid artery on Gylding's neck. She could no longer feel the artery pulsing and Gylding's body temperature was only a little warm, as if he had died not too long ago. "He's dead." Lilioth slumped sideways, her eyes instantly watering. "He is not dead yet, but has entered a strange state of false death." The voice of the boy from earlier passed through the communication function on Lilioth's watch to her ear. "False death?" Lilioth looked down at her watch and asked with some surprise. "Yes, his physique is very special," Neptune continued. When he dozed off just now, I also thought that he had died because the cells in his body were undergoing severe necrosis. Not only that, his heart had stopped beating and his body temperature slowly began to drop. The only thing that proved that he was still alive was that his brain was still functioning, and that the link between him and I had not yet terminated. You are. Hearing this, Lilith froze as she quickly wiped her wet eyes with her sleeve. My name is Neptune. I am a super-intelligent living being, whilst the form I am taking now is the watch on his hand, Neptune explained. No wonder he knows so much information about this planet. Seeming to realize that he had digressed, Lilith then asked, is there a way to revive him from this state of false death? This state of false death is largely due to the necrosis of a large number of cells. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely not survive. But I'm guessing if all the necrotic cells in his body can be repaired, he will wake up. Neptune knew it was a long shot but suggested a plan anyway. This was only a theoretical inference. He had no proof that it was going to work. Do you need a cell repair agent? Lilith took out several tubes of Grade D cell repair agents from her inventory. Grade D are useless. His cells were destroyed by energy close to what is given out by a rank 7 gene body. If we wish to repair them, it needs to at least be a Grade D cell repair agent. Neptune stopped Lilith from wasting the medicine. In his current state, will it okay for us to move him about in an interstellar spacecraft? Lilith was silent for a moment as she pondered their options. His vital signs are very stable. This should be no problem. Neptune checked Gylding's body again and came to this conclusion. Then we will leave this starfield as soon as possible and go to Fenyuan, where Grade D cell repair agents should be available, said Lilith just as she lifted Gylding. However, Neptune suddenly thought of something. Wait, I suddenly remembered that there is another method we can try. What method? Lilith asked quickly. Although Gylding failed to get rid of that guy's body just now, he had seriously damaged it. Go first and see if it's still there, Neptune suggested, before marking a yellow dot on Lilith's map. The yellow dot on the map is where the opponent had landed, which I had calculated earlier. It should be within 3 meters of the dot. Go to the location and look for him. If you see him, get rid of the guy and then grab the watch on his hand. That guy may have a Grade D cell repair agent in his storage space. After all, he was a rank 6 gene body. Lilith nodded, but after a moment, she raised her doubts. That's not right. Once the host dies, only the federal government can reactivate the watch. Even if we get the watch, we can't take out its contents. I can take it out, Neptune said firmly. Of course. It would be good if that guy has a Grade D cell repair agent in his inventory, but I was not thinking of the cell repair agent. I was thinking of the 4 energy crystals that he had taken before. Gylding had absorbed 2 energy crystals and gained 2 different abilities. So, I was wondering whether he would gain other abilities and come back to life if we implanted the remaining crystals in him. In any case, it's worth trying, Lilith said as she stood up. I'll come back as soon as I can. The location of the yellow dot was less than 300 meters away from Gylding's current position. Lilith took a moment to arrive, but she did not see the enemy's body at the location. She opened her pupillary abilities and searched her surroundings but was still unable to find the enemy. However, she found a closed smartwatch in some grass. I found a smartwatch, but I didn't see anyone. I used my pupillary abilities to scan everything within a range of nearly 100 meters, but there were no signs of life. Lilith lowered her head to look at the watch. I know the guy isn't dead, but I didn't expect him to have the strength to escape. There may be some special abilities that he had not shown before. Neptune was not too surprised. After all, he already knew that the other party was not dead. So right now the game was not yet called. Bring the watch over. He probably took it off to prevent me from tracking him. Although he did not know of my existence, he should have guessed that Gylding may have the ability to hack smartwatches after the previous video was blocked. What a cautious guy. Holding onto the watch, Lilith returned to Gylding. What should I do now? Neptune gave her instructions. Put the watch onto Gylding's hand and I will take out what is needed. Lilith strapped the watch onto Gylding's wrist as Neptune quickly started the other party's watch and opened the storage space. He could not help but exclaim, "This guy is really rich." He took out a bottle of Grade D cell repair agent from the space as well as a 4th order gene energy crystal bead. Help him inject the cell repair agent first to see if it works. Lilioth nodded and injected Gylding with a tube of Grade D cell repair agent. With this, the necrotic cells in Gylding improved slightly and began to repair slowly. However, based on their current speed, it might take at least 1 month for him to recover completely. Continue injecting him. Seeing that it was working, Neptune took out the remaining 10 tubes of cell repair agents. Based on common sense, only 1 tube of cell repair agent could be used per week, no more than 2 tubes at most. Nevertheless, Gylding was in a special situation now, and since Neptune was monitoring his physical condition at all times, there was no need to worry about overdosing. Lilioth injected Gylding with a 2nd tube and then a 3rd tube. Only after the 10th tube of medicine was injected did Gylding's heart finally start beating again. Although he was still asleep, his physical condition had significantly improved. Having said that, less than 10% of the necrotic cells in his body had been repaired, and more than 50% of the cells in his body were still necrotic. His physical condition has improved a lot, but there is no more Grade D medicine. Neptune's voice did not seem any more relaxed. Now, implant him with the energy crystals and see if his body can choose the new power on its own and improve his condition as soon as possible. Regarding the awakening of abilities, some people had previously proposed the subconscious choice theory. This theory suggested that the acquisition of abilities was generally related to the ability one wanted to obtain subconsciously. Although there was no definite evidence to prove this theory, many people in the academic community still supported the theory. What Neptune was hoping was that Gylding's subconscious would be aware of the bad condition of his body and, in doing so, would choose a new ability that could allow Gylding to recover quickly. Lilioth sterilized Gylding's neck and then completed the implantation operation quickly. After that energy crystal was implanted into Gylding's body, Neptune once again saw the appearance of the special virus. Just as he had planned. They took only a moment to devour the energy crystal. Please, give Gylding a new special ability, let him get well soon. Although he did not believe in any gods, Neptune prayed silently in his heart. Soon, there was a new change in Gylding's gene chain. Chapter 60. Under Neptune's observation, the gene chain changed its shape at a speed visible to the naked eye. Neptune also clearly remembered that this gene chain was the one from which Gylding had obtained the regeneration ability from before. Less than 2 minutes later, the morphological changes of the gene chain were completed, and Neptune rescanned Gylding's body data. Name, Gylding. Gender, male. Age, 15. Gene level, level 2. Special ability 1, rage level 2, evolvable. Ability description: attack power, defense power, speed, recovery ability tripled, duration 10 minutes. Side effects: 10 hours into prostration, combat power is halved. Special ability 2, regeneration level 3, evolvable. Ability description: the cell regeneration ability is increased 4 times, permanently. Comprehensive cell index, 100. Mental strength index, 98. Battle prowess, B+. Cognition, A. The only thing that had changed was Gylding's regenerative capacity, which had evolved from the 2nd grade to the 3rd grade, and the regenerative capacity of the cells, which had increased from 3 times to 4 times. After the regeneration ability was strengthened, Neptune also clearly noticed that the recovery rate of Gylding's cells was accelerating. However, this was still not enough. The crystals have been completely absorbed just now. I still have 6 energy crystals of the 4th order gene body, so just implant them all into him, Neptune said before taking out the 6 remaining energy crystals. Won't this be a problem? Lilioth was slightly worried. It doesn't matter, just implant them one by one. I will constantly monitor his physical condition. If there is a problem, we can stop it immediately, Neptune explained. The crystal nucleus that was just implanted allows his regenerative ability to evolve. If we continue to implant it, it should allow his regenerative ability to continue to evolve, explained Neptune as he pulled up Gylding's body data. Seeing that Gylding's regenerative ability had evolved from level 2 to level 3, she finally understood the strangeness of Gylding's physique and nodded in response to Neptune's request. With the implantation of the 2nd crystal nucleus, Gylding's regenerative ability had evolved as Neptune had expected. Then, as per his request, Lilioth implanted the remaining energy crystals into Gylding's body one by one, causing Gylding's regenerative ability to repeatedly evolve. His physical condition had also improved significantly, whilst even his heartbeat gradually returned to normal. When the last energy crystal was implanted, the weird virus swallowed the crystal once again. Neptune silently watched the change of the small gene chain. After the morphological transformation was complete, it actually extended and spread to the two adjacent gene chains like an infection. Then, the other two small gene chains began to undergo a morphological transformation themselves. Seeing this change, Neptune was a little bit restless. He was worried that the regeneration ability would be transformed into another ability because of this change. What Gylding needed most right now was regeneration. His database also recorded the situation, the emergence of an ability accompanied by a small change in the gene chain. When this ability evolved to its peak, it would cause the surrounding gene chains to change, resulting in new abilities. Once this happens, the original abilities would be replaced. Sometimes, the new ability would be an advanced version of the original ability, but other times, the new ability would be completely different from the original ability. This was what Neptune most worried about. The change lasted for nearly 10 minutes before it finally stopped. Then, Neptune scanned Gylding's physical condition again. Name, Gylding. Gender, male. Age, 15. Gene level, level 2. Special ability 1, rage level 2. Evolvable. Ability description: attack power, defense power, speed, recovery ability tripled, duration 10 minutes. Side effects: 10 hours into prostration, combat power is halved. Special ability 2, high speed regeneration level 1, evolvable. Ability description: the cell regeneration ability increased tenfold, permanently. Comprehensive cell index, 100. Mental strength index, 98. Battle prowess, B+. Cognition, A. High-speed regeneration was a kind of advanced ability, and generally, only the strongest practitioners with a 6th order gene or higher had any chance of obtaining it. This was because in most situations, the gene itself had to be strong enough to withstand the changes in the gene chain brought about by higher abilities. Thus, in theory, the 3 gene chains of the 6th order gene were the basis for the emergence of higher abilities. Without this foundation, changes in the gene chain commonly brought about by higher capabilities would often fail. Not only that, but the failure of the gene chain change would also bring bad results. The best case scenario was that the ability of this gene chain would stay in place permanently but could not be advanced. The worst case was that the entire gene chain would break down, causing people to die if they do not receive treatment within 24 hours. Upon achieving the ability to regenerate at a high speed, the originally necrotic cells in Gylding finally began to resurrect at a rate visible to the naked eye. The changes brought about by high-speed regeneration were not only the acceleration of the rate of regeneration, but also the original regeneration ability becoming 10 times stronger. When it came to necrotic cells, the regeneration ability needed the help of a cell repair agent to catalyze the regeneration of cells. With the high-speed regeneration ability, the cell repair agent was no longer needed. This was the essential difference between the two abilities. Feeling that Gylding's biological fluctuations had finally stabilized, Neptune felt relieved. Gylding's breathing seems to have stabilized, so there shouldn't be any major problems with his body now. Lilioth had also been paying attention to the changes in Gylding. Well, his regeneration ability has successfully evolved into high-speed regeneration. At its current rate, all necrotic cells will be restored to normalcy in about 2 or 3 days. Neptune made the estimation based on the current regeneration rate of Gylding's cells. Once his cells recover, will he be able to wake up? Lilioth knew that since physical damage to Gylding's body had put his consciousness in a dormant state, even once the injuries had recovered, Gylding's consciousness might not return. This was the so-called vegetative state. Theoretically, he will wake up once the pain felt by his body falls to a bearable level, but the success rate is also related to his will to survive. The stronger the will to survive, the earlier he will wake up. Neptune explained, he is now in a stable condition, so let's find a safe place to take shelter. There must be a lot of people infected with the virus roaming the woods at night. Let us go into the shipyard, it is safe inside, Lilioth said. Pulling on Gylding's arm, she lifted him up. However, She paused after noticing Yilding's weight. He seems to be much heavier than I thought. The muscle and bone density of martial art practitioners are much greater than ordinary people, so their weight cannot be estimated by just the size of their body, Neptune explained. Neptune, how can you make a girl carry me? Yilding's weak voice suddenly interrupted them. If you just want to support me or have a particular novel in mind that you'd like to request, please join my Ko-fi or Patreon. The links are below. Once again thank you Momo Clan.